in college when your family got their first car?
And that's how we ended up over there. They bought that house. They were buying it.
So they bought a house brand new?
Yes.
5, 4,
Who knew that?
2,
Who knew that?
1.
Palm Love would come up, like University of Palm Love, or like I know you all know it's Branch Normal and AM and N. Welcome to the Branch Normal Collection. My name is KP. For this episode, we're going to be interviewing Eboni Zamani. But before we talk to Eboni, let's talk about our spotlight. Here are 10 facts about Bessie Stringfield. At the age of 16, Bessie Stringfield taught herself how to ride her first motorcycle. She was the first African American woman to ride across the United States solo. She was born around February of 1911, and she lived until February of 1993, riding her motorcycle up until the point she passed at 82 years old due to a heart condition. In 1930, at the age of 19, she began tossing a penny onto a map and riding to wherever it landed. On several occasions, she rode through all of the 48 lower states. Because she was a black woman, she was often denied accommodation while traveling. So, she would sleep on her motorcycle at gas stations. She made long-distance trips in Europe, Brazil, and Haiti. Bessie Stringfield owned 27 Harley-Davidsons. She became a licensed practical nurse, an LPN, in the 1950s. She was a civilian motorcycle dispatch rider for the U.S. Army during World War II. For about 4 years, she served as a civilian courier for the U.S. Army, carrying documents between domestic Army bases. She completed the rigorous training and rode her own Blue 61 Harley-Davidson. She founded the Iron Horse Motorcycle Club. She could ride while standing in the saddle of her Harley, and news reporters called her the Negro Motorcycle Queen, and later the Motorcycle Queen of Miami. Stringfield was inducted into the Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 2002. There's a Bessie Stringfield tribute ride which takes place every year. You should be able to find a little information about the tribute ride that takes place. It's an all-women's ride that takes place once a year in honor of Bessie Stringfield. And it's been taking place for about 8 years now here in 2021. I hope you all do your research and find more information about Bessie Stringfield. Hopefully we'll get a movie one day. Of course, she was mentioned in the Lovecraft Country episode as well. I believe it's the Name Yourself episode with Hippolyta. If not, it's the episode before. But I think it's episode 6 or 7. Yeah, check out more information on Bessie Stringfield. For now, let's get into our interview with Eboni Zamani. So welcome, Eboni Zamani, to the Branch Normal Collection.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we were already talking. I like to hop right in. So yeah, like being vegan, having ancestors, obviously, who worked the land. So right, when we talk about our ancestors being slaves, like we use the word slave, but I was working on a poem last week. And in the poem, I had to revise some lines. It's my second time. And I went back and I was like, Southern planters. I was like, oh, shoot, our ancestors were Southern planters. When we talk about Southern planters, we're normally talking about white land-owning males, right? And we call them planters. But Black people were the people who put the seed in the ground, right?
That's true.
Those were the people who really taking care of the land and making sure these crops grow.
That's true. Planters, agricultural workers, yes, they were enslaved. It was by force, but that's the truth. It's like agricultural work is in all of our background. If your family have been here for X amount of generations, they came through the South some type of way, and that's our background, So it's interesting for me to be in the space of reconnecting land-based joints, and there's a new program called Lessons of the Land that I've been, working under and with. The last year has been really helpful for me, just making that reconnection, because I don't think it was a point of pain for me, but it was just a foreign concept, being as though I'm from Philly, right? And it's so weird because my grandmom and them, on my mom's side, my grandmom and them are, you know, from this right from the South. And so like my
Where are they
great
from?
grandmother, when they all came up from North Carolina, they're from a small town called Rose Hill, North Carolina, which is like 45 minutes outside of Fayetteville.
Okay.
And I've never been. I'm actually planning to go sometime this fall, which is going to be a nice little, like, you know, trip back into, you know, ancestral lands and plains and things. But
Nice.
but I've been to Fayetteville. I used to spend summers in Fayetteville with family because, you know, the Army base is out there.
Okay.
So yeah, so
Fayetteville is real. Not to cut you off.
yeah.
Almost got in a fight in a poetry venue in Fayetteville, but that's a whole. That's
Nothing is real. It's funny because it's gotten more a certain type of way over time. But like when we were still younger, it was still like it got when it's dark at 6 o'clock, all the lights ain't no street lights. You know, it's like dirt roads, depending on some places you go. So it's funny to see how like metropolitan has gotten over the years. Like it's definitely changed. But yeah, like so like having that reconnect, it was like so foreign to me because it's like I'm from Philly, we from the city, like ain't nobody doing none of that. But it's like I do have memory of being a younger person and like being a kid, and my great grandmother grew stuff in her backyard because she was a sharecropper when she was a kid. You know, that's what she did when she was younger. So it's funny because that disconnect happens so quickly, and it's just being in the city and living in the city, you completely, you know, lose that. And so yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me.
it's crazy because so I'm from Arkansas. My mother, they chopped cotton, right? So don't ask me the difference, but there's a difference between chopping cotton and picking cotton, right? So
Okay.
my mom chopped cotton, my oldest aunt chopped cotton, and they used to chop cotton with my grandmother, their mother. And then because I mean we've been in Arkansas since the late 1800s. And but when I was in school in Georgia, when I was in college in Georgia, my senior year, I started doing a lot of family tree research and just had these questions like what were these people doing? Like, where did they live? How did they move from one city to another and all of that? And what was clear for me was this connection to the land, a connection to the land. And, you know, they didn't, after slavery, they didn't say, oh, we're going to move north. Not for my family, right? I don't have any records of anybody moving to the north until I moved to the north, right? I'm the first one to like live above Maryland, at least. Like, and even that, most of our family is Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and Arkansas. That's the bloodline. But really looking at their connection to the land, thinking about them as one, people who work the land, and also like the men as voters, right? Because obviously like women weren't allowed to vote at the time. But like seeing my grandparents as like land owning people right after slavery who were registered to vote, paying property taxes and things like that, just like made me like think about land in a different way. And like you say, growing our own food and things like that. All right. And in general, like doing family tree research is just really an amazing journey because it connects you back with the people who are living as well.
Right.
Had a lot of conversation with aunts that I never imagined that I would have. Yeah. And so, but one question I want to ask you about being vegan is like, what have been some of those, my friends always want to know what my replacements are. So I've fallen in love with falafel and like mushrooms. And so like, yeah, what are some of the foods you've fallen in love with, you know, during this journey?
Yes, definitely falafel. I've eaten a lot more Mediterranean food than I probably ever did in my life prior to being plant-based. I do a lot of mushrooms. Mushrooms, especially different kinds, like are great substitutes for different things. A lot of people like oyster mushrooms for like a fish or chicken replacement. And again, it's not, I never tell anybody it's exactly, you know, the same. You know, I would never say, you know, buffalo cauliflower tastes just like buffalo chicken. Obviously it doesn't, but you know, it's a nice, I always say that like, it's funny to me when I've had certain reactions from like family members of people hearing about that, you know, hearing about me changing my lifestyle, and it's like, oh well, what do you eat anymore? And it's like I eat a lot of different things. I've been reintroduced to like okra and a lot of like vegetables and fruits that I haven't eaten in a long time or I never have before, and I've tried the last few years. But it's like I'm still Blake at the end of the day. We still like for our food to be flavorful, and it's like I'll say like, would you eat bland chicken? No, you would not.
Right.
So it's like you should take care of what I personally think. I can't say we in general, but what I personally seen a lot of the time is like, from what I remember, like growing up, just how food was prepared is like the vegetables sort of get thrown away. It's like either they get boiled to death, or the only way anybody can eat them if it's a stick of butter on them, or a glob of cheese. But it's like just cook your vegetables or eat them raw and prepare them in a way that's flavorful and going to be fulfilling, and that you enjoy tasting it. Like it's like I season certain vegetables the way I used to season meat, and it's good for me. You know what I mean? I'll marinate things, I make sauces, and so you make it taste good. I'm not eating like, I'm not just like picking up pieces of grass and eating out the grass,
Right.
Like that would
Exactly.
be enjoyable,
You're not foraging, right?
I like a lot of different things. But yeah, mushrooms, falafel has definitely been big for me. I like some of the faux meats, but I stay away from like soy. So things that are typically made up of like potatoes and, like coconut and things like that. I think if you don't like coconut, then that might be a hard substitute. But yeah, like, I drink all of the almond and coconut and cashew milk, as dairy substitutes. I think cashews are some of my favorites as far as substitutes, because I feel like the flavor is sort of just a natural taste. I feel like of cashews is very mild, and so you can make it taste like a lot of different things pretty easily. Whereas like a coconut, if you're using coconut or coconut milk, you really have to like coconut, because you're not going to get rid of the flavor. You know what I mean? When you're cooking it, like you just have to enjoy it. So yeah. So those are some of the ones for me.
Right. No, that's real. Yeah, that coconut, you try to make some cream for some pasta or something, you're gonna taste that coconut regardless. Yeah.
Right.
But it does come down to spices though. Like that, so so Indian food, they know what to do with some spices, right? And so I'm like, I need to know what's up, like what flavor, what spices to use and what herbs to use. And like, that's a whole other part of cooking that, we just overlook sometimes. And the interesting thing about meat is that once you stop eating it, or once you slow down on eating it, it becomes tough to you. I'll say for me, when I started eating more buffalo, cauliflower, falafel, things like that, I had some chicken one day and I was like, oh my God, like I have to do so much work. This is, I have to like really work to chew this food. And especially when you get in some red meats as well. And so like, it's not a thing of where people have to like go cold turkey all of a sudden. You can just ease your way into it over some years if you want to, over some months, some years, whatever your pace is. Because you're talking about changing lifestyle. You're not talking about, oh, I want to fulfill this challenge. You're really talking about like changing your lifestyle.
And it's better on your digestive system if you don't do things like that anyway. Because if you are a heavy meat and dairy eater, going, I'm going to go 3 months raw vegan or vegan, you don't know how your body might respond to that, and then going back to beat at a certain point in time. Don't do that to yourself. I would agree. I did the same thing. Like it was like a process for me. I never actually thought I was going to be vegan. I thought the most might be vegetarian, because I didn't think I was ever going to give up chicken. I was like, I don't care what y'all talking about. I'm always going to eat chicken, But it was like a process for me over the years. Like I stopped eating red meat 10 years ago, And I think giving up cheese sticks was like the hardest thing for me. But like when I was able to do that, I was like, I'm good off the red meat, So I stopped eating red meat 10 years ago. Then it was like slowly but surely other things went. And like the last thing before meat for me was dairy. And so like, I always do tell people that now, that if you genuinely want to be vegan at some point in time, I would advise you stop eating dairy before you stop eating meat. I had to stop eating dairy because of a health issue I was having. But it just made me pay attention to how much dairy is in like everything. You know what I mean? Because you can prepare a meal and just add meat to it. You're not going to go to the store and buy a box of rice and it got meat in it, or buy bread and it got meat in it, but everything had dairy in it, and that just was like, I was like, yeah, like this is crazy. So it wasn't hard for me after a while, because like the American diet, I feel like dairy and meat go hand in hand, and it's like if you're not eating one, it's not going to be hard. I feel like personally, it's not going to be hard for you to get rid of the other. So I feel like when I had to stop eating dairy, it was kind of like, do I want to keep eating meat? So
yeah, the same here. So in our household, we ended up going dairy free and gluten free for kind of had a health scare, I'll say. And I never imagined being dairy free. Never even knew what gluten free was until like started moving towards the lifestyle. But the cheese was like, oh my God, I have to give up cheese. And like pizza, oh my goodness, like I can give up fried chicken, like because fried chicken is it's got to be at somebody's mama's house or aunt's house, something like that. I don't eat fried chicken from like KFC or something like that. I don't buy it out. And so if I'm at somebody's house, like I'll eat some fried chicken. So that wasn't hard to give up. And even today, like if it really came down to it, if there was a plate in front of me, I might say yes, depending on the day. But I'm not going to seek it out. So, but with dairy, it was like, oh, I have to give up cheese and then ice cream as well, right? But here's the thing, like, luckily we live in 2021, and so you have a lot more options than you would have had like even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Seriously.
I know. So many like lifelong vegans I know, the last couple of years have been telling me how good we have it now. And they like, nah, y'all, listen, it wasn't nothing. you had to make your own stuff, or, that was pretty much it. So I'm like, I'm happy. I got in right when.
Right. At a good time.
And there's more stuff coming out all the time now. So I'm like, I can do this.
Exactly. I've been getting Trader Joe's. They have like these gluten-free everything bagels, cinnamon raisin bread, all of this, and like regular bread. And I'm like, wow, yeah. More and more is coming, like more stores too. But what's interesting though is what I've noticed is that it's hard to find some of these items in Black communities still, right? Yeah. Sometimes I have to go a little bit out of the city or like further away from, the more central areas to find these foods. And so like, that's been interesting to me to think about, we've always talked about food deserts, but now when it comes to like healthy food, I mean, because some Black people just really like gluten is making them sick, right? Or dairy is making them sick. And now it's not like some, I don't know, it's not like high class thing. It's like, no, you literally need a different type of food to take care of your body. And if you have trouble accessing it, then like, what do you do? And so I've been thinking about that a lot more as well. Yeah, for sure. I think I'm hoping that like with a lot of, like I said, the farms popping up, and it seems to be like more and more each day. Like I know I just got introduced to farmer Joe in Philly this year, and she's like in Germantown, Elkins Park, in like the Northwest region. Sankofa is holding down like Southwest and stuff like that. So, they're popping up. I think the more that they get like funded and supported, because they're about growing and learning how to grow and plant your own food, but they can do more like any other form, like, jar things, pickle things and stuff like that over time when they have more support, more funding and things like that. So, hopefully, as they, more people learn about them and what they're doing, they're able to sort of expand out more in the neighborhoods and provide that type of access. Yeah, and I see that happening. My partner volunteered with Land-Based Johns over the last year a few times. I interviewed Celeste, who has her business Green Grocer C, and actually went to her garden as well. And so, I'm seeing that shift, and like really happy to see it. Speaking of shifts, I want to talk about videography and photography with you. Of course, like this is your whole background. I actually have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna jump right in. So the first thing I wanted to know was I want to do an exchange. I want to give you some of my like 3 of my favorite movies and 3 of my favorite documentaries, and here's some of yours in return. So right now, my 3 favorite movies haven't changed in years. So my 3 favorite movies are don't judge me, Paid in Full, Malcolm X, and The 5 Heartbeats. So those are my 3 favorite movies. The Thank you.
That's two and a questionable, but it's a good three.
Well, what's going to be even more questionable is I'm thinking about replacing Paid in Full with Belly soon because I'm gonna write a whole essay about Belly.
Though. Belly is like a cult classic, and it's like it's so bad at points it's good. Like it's like it had so much potential, and it's hilarious because like of course Hype Williams on the visuals was like crazy, you know, to look at it certain times, but it is chock full of so much is happening in one movie.
It's wild, but I always look at it from the mindset of I think it's 98. It comes out 98, 99, something like that. Mm-hmm. And but in my opinion, it's the first Judas and the Black Messiah, right?
Okay.
Hear me out. So DMX,
I'm listening.
Hear me out. In the movie, you had Nas and DMX, right? And they're both selling
Mm-hmm.
drugs or whatever. DMX really is like completely into the drug game, but he gets caught. He gets caught up with the judicial system, right? And the cops try to make him kill the minister, this black mm-hmm. leader, right? Mm-hmm. And that's to me, and that's how he ends up in the belly of the beast, right? And to me, that's what the movie is about. Like he's sort of being bribed or blackmailed to kill this black leader. But the black leader's message is so pure that DMX is overcome by it, and he ends up like not killing him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When people talk about Belly, they really just talk about it like it was a long hip hop video, and I'm like, I hear that, but also there was some substance there. Yeah, there was so much though. It even along the way, like Nas's determination to just go to Africa was hilarious to me throughout the whole movie. Even after getting shot, you shot at the barbershop. He like, it's time to go right now. Where are y'all going, guys? And then like the Jamaicans made a cameo. I was just like, it's a lot going on. So yeah, Belly I think is there was somebody with crimps. It was a bull crimps in the I was just like, Belly's hilarious. I always say I love the opening scene. I don't think anybody can ever take that away from them. The opening scene was crazy. And I liked all of the blue light stuff with like Keisha, what's Terrell Hicks, I believe is her name. Yeah. So yeah, I always like that lighting and those like setups with certain scenes, but like yeah, Belly's definitely a cult classic. Nobody ever gonna be able to take that away from them. So this is true. Now, my favorite, I can't even say my favorite documentaries. I'll just say documentaries that I've watched recently or been thinking about recently. Eyes on the Prize, of course, is like top of the list for me. It's like a whole series, right? The original one from the 80s. Even I like the new one, kind of a reprise almost. So Eyes on the Prize. I really like the Black Church documentary that Skip Gates did, put out within this last year. And then I don't even know what my third is right now, but I'll throw I recently watched the Rick James documentary and the Prince documentary. They both came out within the last month or two. And so I enjoyed both of those. But I like documentaries more than I like films, to be very honest with you.
Yeah, that's understandable. I've dabbled in both. I'm in the documentary space right now as far as like work that I'm working on, and I probably get back into narrative next year, the year after. But yeah, I think I like both for different reasons. So I'll say this. As far as my list, I feel like it changes, right? Because I have a lot of movies. I've seen a lot of stuff over the years, and I have a lot of things that I like. And I think that sometimes my favorites list can change depending on what space I'm in or like what I'm studying or what script I might be rereading to like, you know, just sort of bounce ideas off of things, you know, when I'm thinking about a particular idea or when I'm working on my own work. But I will say one that's never changed for me over the years is Set It Off. That's always been one of my favorite movies.
Underrated still. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, Gary M. Gray did his thing.
When I see who's on the bus, Jada Pinkett, she rides by at the end, sees Queen Latifah. Like I just almost break down every time. Like, oh my God, like I have to pull myself together.
Right. I feel like no matter how many times I've seen Set It Off. I always go through the motions with them. Like, yes, they got the money. Like, oh no, this happened. Like, damn, why they have to get caught up there last night? Like, I go through it with them like every time. So yeah, I think that's always gonna be like one of my favorites. But I'm trying to think of recently, like what's been like on my list of things. I really liked I'd be thinking about certain movies and I'd be like, damn, that's a show. Because there'd be so much stuff now like online that's like, oh, that's a series. That's not
What's the show you were just thinking about?
The show I was just thinking about actually, so I've been watching a show called Glow that's on Netflix.
Yo, Glow is really good.
It's like comedic, like, you know, dramedy, you know, about women's wrestling. And I think I could appreciate it because I was a wrestling fan when I was younger. I was, you know, I heard WWF, you know, loved the Attitude Era. That was my thing. Me and my siblings, you know, so
the what
I was
era?
like, oh, this is funny, you know.
Which era, WWF?
The Attitude Era. So like, you know, a little, right? I would say I was probably like 5 or 6 when we started. Like my grandma actually got us into wrestling, which is hilarious. And you know, like Stone Cold and all of them coming up, and Undertaker and everybody, and then like, you know, in that time, so the
Heartbreak Kid and all that. Yeah. Bret Hart. Yeah.
Right. The Hardy Boys and Lita and all of them. Like we really enjoyed. That was a staple in our house. So yeah, Glow, I really did enjoy a lot. Some of the actresses and I think some of the circumstances remind me a lot of Bridesmaids, the movie. And I always, that's always like one of my favorite like comedy movies because they were just like so insane in their film. So Glow reminded me of that a little bit.
See that.
And I think I was really enjoying watching that show. And there's a show called Blood and Water, South African like teen drama. And you gotta go down the rabbit hole at some point of South African and Nigerian Netflix because it'd be a lot going on. You watch one show or one movie, you be like, oh, this is good. And then they had something similar on. I'd be like, oh, I'm watching that now. So
I've been seeing more and more Nollywood on Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah. They the production levels and everything. Like I'm like, oh, this is a far cry from like the movies I used to watch in the when I was getting my hair braided back in the day in the African shops. It's like I'm like it's level. It's like it's crazy. I'm like the production is crazy. I'm like I might need to look for some work out there. You know.
Why not?
But yeah. So I think those are some of the ones I've been watching lately, and I've been enjoying. As far as documentaries recently, so I'll say one that has consistently been on a list for me is Spike Lee's doc about Katrina, you know, when the levees break. I thought it was really, really good work. I feel like it was good to see Spike transition and later on in his career in a documentary and see him be successful with that because you don't often see that. Like typically filmmakers, I feel like who are able to make good movies and good documentaries do it consistently throughout their career, you know? And so it was good to see him make that transition from narrative and be able to still create such great work. So that's consistently on my list. But I watched High on the Hog on Netflix, which was really, really, really good. That whole journey through like our culinary history and experience, African-American culinary history experience from the continent through the South, through various parts of the country was like, they tied in so much. I thought it was really, really good. And I've recommended. There was a couple of chefs, I think even locally here that ended up being a part of it, which was dope. And I'm trying to think of another documentary. I actually watched because I'm working on like a short music doc. I actually watched like a Philly hip hop doc from like the 80s when like Schoolie D was like, you know, doing his thing, and like they had you know, Jazzy Jeff and Will Smith early on, and it was real interesting to see. I think it's on YouTube. Like I feel like if you put in like, you know, Philly hip hop 80s, it's like quintessential like Philadelphia like 80s Philly, which is hilarious. So I've been enjoying that.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah.
Check that out. Yeah, I really enjoy High on the Hog as well. And when you mentioned Spike Lee, it made me think of Four Little Girls. It's Four Little Girls.
Yes.
which I
Yes.
remember sitting down and watching as a whole big family at my grandmother's house when I was a kid. And he did a good documentary on Michael Jackson's Off the Wall a few years back as
Yeah.
well for Showtime. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
For little girls. Yeah, that's definitely another one. It just like breaks your heart, but it's so well put together, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know. All right. So there's a documentary on I think HBO Max maybe that came out recently. It was about a lynching that occurred in Alabama in the 60s or 70s, maybe the 70s or 80s. But in it, they talk about, and this is like new. I mean, it came out within the last 2 or 3 weeks. I wish I could remember the name of it. But there was another girl at the church, right? The 16th Street bombing, who like she lost an eye in this, but she knew those girls. She was right there with those girls. She's a grown woman today, and her story, like they captured her story in that same documentary about the lynching as well. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Here's a whole other element to this that we haven't heard about
at all, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that often has happened with like probably some of the like most traumatic things that we've gone through or known about in our history, is that a lot of things fly under the radar. Like for me, I think watching Lovecraft Country, I think late last year made me go back and look into like Emmett Till's story. And like when you really start to dive into like that entire kidnap and his death, it's just like it's so much more gruesome and horrendous than than we even understand, or like I think was like common public knowledge. So it's like it's not surprising, and I think a lot of the times it's intentional because they don't want to be accountable for what was done, and what transpired, or even the fact that like Watchmen, Watchmen, the series, the latest version has to be one of my favorite TV shows in the last 10 years. If it's not on that list of, this decade's whatever, they doing it a disservice. But, or even like how Watchmen getting popular brought Tulsa to light, right? It's like only after the show, after so many people who even survived it for years had been going back and forth with Oklahoma, going back and forth with Tulsa, the city of Tulsa about, y'all need to be accountable, paying damages, all of that type of thing. It was just constant like this, they ignoring them. They kind of like, took them to a brunch or something every year to say, we apologize on the low. And that would pretty much be it. And so it's like this TV show has to come out before there's real, acknowledgement, and before people are able to be, I'm giving some sort of, apology or real, monetary whatever for damages, for damages done and for like pain that they went through. So
because in these situations, it's not even like, oh, here's money for your emotional pain. It's money to like, we should help get y'all back where y'all were at in the moment, right? Because in the moment in Tulsa, we're in the middle of businesses, right? Dentist offices, own post office, right? Own schools, right? Own grocery stores. So at least I should have enough money to have my own grocery store to be able to start my own grocery store, right? Exactly. I'm not saying like you need to just make everything perfect for me. It's not a handout if you just give us what you took from us, right?
I'm like anything else. Like you deal with the IRS, you deal with getting a loan from the bank. They want whatever they gave you and interest, for the time between, whatever it was to this time. Like so, right. Like it always cracks me up. Like even reparations coming up as like something that was on, the bill for the last presidential election, and so many of the candidates having to speak on it probably for the first time, since they've run for political office seriously. And, half of them ignoring it or not having a real plan or not having no obligation. But it's like, they always act like, like we asking for, something that y'all don't owe us, like everybody know, like we all know. So like, let's, cut the BS. and, cut the checks. Like that's really what it comes down to, it be the madness for me. It's like so many other groups have been paid out in this country for damages done, the traumas they've been put through. I'm like, so, like when is ours coming? Seriously,
right. And we use it however we use it, right? Some people will waste it, right? Which is cool. We got that freedom too. That's a part of freedom. Right. and
exactly.
some will use it, right? And some will like really push forward with it. So
right. Yeah, or land, cool. Like, land that even at times, even like in the years after slavery, when, besides the land that some of our ancestors might have been given by, the people who owned them or what have you, there were Black people who actually was able to, make a little coin for themselves and brought their own land. Or, there were some who actually did get their 40 acres and a mule, but it was this constant, the eminent domain stuff. It was constantly, the government needs to make room for this, that, and the third. And so we taking all this from up underneath you. Give us our land back, because land the price don't change. You can always consistently, have an asset to bargain with and what have you. You see what I'm saying? Give us our land back, exactly.
Yeah. And it's crazy because when you look at the stories, it's like one thing I don't think we think about, talk about a lot is like how many Black people are already free in the North, right? How many Black people free in the North and what type of jobs they're working, but also how many Black people bought themselves out of slavery, right? Just worked and worked and worked, saved up their own money during slavery, right? Because what annoys me sometimes in general is that we don't think about slaves as people, as in like I'm sure my name is Peter Jones, whatever, and I work for my master, but I have goals, right? I've been saving up this amount of money. I do this every year. My wife does this. We raise our kids because we kind of go worst case scenario for every Black family. Go ahead.
But the reason behind that though, and that's what's funny for me, because I debated earlier on, like when I was first getting into filmmaking, whether or not I was ever going to do a slave movie or series or whatever, quote unquote, right? Like whatever the hell that's supposed to be. But I feel like now like I said, I'm more comfortable with like understanding that narrative is our own. And when you talk about reclaiming and taking back or just doing things originally from your own self perspective, culture, that really doesn't have anything to do with anything. Like so much of like narrative, specifically of what we take in visually, audibly in America specifically, it's just white male. It's the white male gaze, for the most part. Yes. It's from their perspective. So it's always going to be worst case scenario. And I've had those experiences being in writing groups or online virtual spaces and things like that, where it was like a diverse group of writers or people trying to like pitch ideas or come up with things. Where it's like, when it's time for like a person of color, like I remember this one group I was in, I won't mention the names or nothing, but the girl was Latina and she had a whole story about a Latina girl that was going through a transition in her life. And she had this certain type of relationship with her father. And she was sort of the writer, she was trying to work out the story. And I'm in this group and it's predominantly white people in the group. And when I tell you the whole session went left and I was just like, what is even going on? There was so many mentions of like, maybe her dad's an illegal immigrant and he's, ICE is after him. And so that makes the relationship complicated. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, she didn't say nothing. What if her dad was born here? She made no mention of this in this story. And like, why are y'all trying to point her in this direction? So I personally reached out to her to say, I don't think you need to do anything regarding that particular storyline. But it was just, I think for the first time for me, it dawned on me how much of narrative that is created and that we take in and that even is created. It's like this is y'all point of entry. And so this is what you assume the story needs to be. But it's like I've been saying for years, I'm like, we don't talk enough about, I know Black people get to say, I'm tired of seeing slavery movies and slave stories. I'm like, but we don't have enough of our people who've made these stories. You can't be tired of something that hasn't been told from your perspective, from people who have your experience, from your culture. Because then we get more in-depth character development. Then we really get to see who people truly are. Then they shouldn't even be called slave movies. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like the fact that there haven't been 101 movies and shows about Harriet Tubman alone tells me that we're not at a point where anybody should be tired of anything. You see what I'm saying?
We get one like every 20, 30 years and like, that's it.
Right. So it's just like, there's so many more things. I was like, I still personally want to work on my Maroon Society film, because I'm like, that's all stuff about, you know, those who constantly fought back, those who left, those who got away, those who, like, to your point, might have brought their freedom, but they did not play. They did not play around. You coming back here to do what? Okay, it's go time then. You see what I'm saying? But it's like, we don't get that and we don't hear it and we haven't heard it and seen it. And you have to, I think we just have to be a little more patient, because things are definitely changing. And I think the internet especially changed the game as far as people being able to get out their movies or their shows or their series ideas without having to go the traditional Hollywood route, which, you know, has helped, you know, so many different things get out there, you know, so many more perspectives. You're not constantly having to appease, you know, white people or the white gays, because a lot of the times you may get a story or an idea up the ladder of, you know, creatives or whatever. But usually by the time you're in a room with executives, it's a bunch of old white guys, like any corporate job in America. You go and present an idea about, like, you know, I would have presented an idea about Black people who fought back constantly during slavery and kept all of their livelihood and kept their towns and villages together and had all that shit. You imagine me presenting some shit like that to a room full of a board full of corporate, you know what I mean? Old white men in suits is not going to happen. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's just like, I'm like, just be a little patient, y'all. Just be a little patient. Yeah. It's coming. But I don't think we've seen enough as far as my particular field of work, film media. We haven't seen enough from Black people to throw away. You know, I think there's a whole avenue and genre and that could open up for us as far as just like reclaiming and rediscovering, and like I said, sort of giving more truth to even certain things that have happened. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think, like, I call it tragedy all the time. Like, I feel like it's often been explored in shows like The Wire or like a Snowfall and stuff like that, where we're comfortable sort of engaging with this. So, you know, they've only given, like, in literature and things like that, credit of, like, you know, the great tragedies, or, you know, the epic tales with the tragic heroes and things like that in European literature, or even before your, you know, like Grecian, you know, Beowulfs and all of those types of things. Right. But I feel like our story specifically in America is a lot like that. You know what I mean? And like I say, I think that's only been explored in shows and certain shows and series. But I feel like there are so many more movies and stories and things that could be told along those same ways. And I always say, like, to quote Martin, when that episode of I forget what episode they was on, but he was like, Romeo and Juliet wasn't a tragedy. You know, Schoolie High was a tragedy. You know, Coach died, he had the scholarship. But I feel like that's so real. You know what I mean? So much of our lives have been tragic in this country, and those stories need to be told. You know what I mean? So I'm looking forward to things like that.
Or even think about you mentioned Maroon Society. You mentioned Maroon Society, and even think about the Gullah Gullah. I'm like, where are these stories? Like, I learned last year. Now, I'm an African American Studies major. I learned last year that Kumbaya is Gullah Gullah. Kumbaya, my Lord. Which I was like, did I not know that, or did I forget it, or what? Right. But, like, just these things, because, you know, like, all right, so even in the Black culture, we'll say stuff all the time. I ain't trying to sit around singing Kumbaya, but it's like, it's actually in our culture to do that. Right. Like, I didn't realize until I was older that, like, Gullah Gullah Island that came on Nickelodeon was that whole line through of, like, the Gullah Gullah culture, right? That's so crazy, because they were schooling us as kids, and what? Like, every episode. I watched it recently. I watched it as an adult, and I was like, oh my God, like, this was just here. You know what I mean? Right. So, like, not making the connection. Yeah, that's the other part of, like, when you do get the things that are in your face, if you don't really know the history, like, you don't even know it's there for you. And, like, and so that's just like, it's exactly what you said. No, we haven't had enough slave movies. You know what I mean? we haven't had enough movies to go into that 400 years of America. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
If it took that long to happen, we can take 400 years to make those movies if we want to. You know what I mean?
Right. And like I said, it doesn't have to be every movie from every Black filmmaker or writer or whatever. But I think for people to be wanting to throw the whole genre away because, like, you see one-dimensional characters. You don't see, you see the same things that have been same. It'd be the same character with Black people. It'd be the same caricatures, but we know that because there's been enough research done and enough books written by Black scholars most of the time about cinema. About the 100+ years of Hollywood, about Birth of a Nation, W.D. Griffiths. I can't even remember his name. I try not to remember.
That's good enough.
his film.
Yeah,
but those characters and those archetypes following us
Mammy,
all the way into the present, right? The Mammy, the brute, the big black brute, the tragic mulatto, all of those things, and it's like I think you really have to like get an understanding of these things, like with anything, like you understand what's happening and what's been happening and what's been created, so that you find ways to get away from that and get out of that. You know what I mean? And I think for me, it's just been about going back to like certain Black filmmakers or cinema that's popped up here and there, the LA Rebellion, Spike Lee, even Oscar Micheaux, his early films, he had his own Black film industry going on before Hollywood started to accept Black people into their films and things like that.
Can you talk about him a little bit?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, can you talk about Oscar Micheaux a little bit more?
Oh, so that was like the guy. He was we went to the Midwest and, decided that he was going to start his own film industry. I forget what the reason was. I'm sure it was probably, I don't remember his reasoning for wanting to start initially, but I'm sure it had something to do with being rejected in the early 1900s as, a Black man who wanted to write and make movies, and so, he started his whole own industry. It was around for about 20 years. 1920s, 1930s into the 40s, and really sort of disintegrated once Hollywood started to get Lena Horne and other people in their films because they saw how much money he was making and that it was viable. And like, oh, I guess if we do make movies for Black people or with Black people in them, Black people will come out and see them, so they wanted in on the cash cow that they were able to sort of come up with. But he's not talked about enough at all. And what's crazy is that I went to school. I majored in film and screen studies, but I minored in African American studies, and it was in my African American studies that I learned about him. Ain't that some mess?
Wow, crazy.
But yeah, he did amazing work. A lot of those early films that you'll see, those black and white films that you'll see of Black people, clips that might come up on the internet and stuff like that, are his films more than likely.
It's around Stormy Weather time and Emperor Jones time.
Yes, all of those things. So. I know for a while Netflix had a lot of his movies on there, but I'm sure if you on YouTube you can find a lot of his films. Yeah, he was the guy. Like I said, it's a wonder to me that more people don't know about him. I've always said that if I was in a certain position that something would have to be named after him, because I was like he started all of that, And then, but yeah, there've been, and then, there was sort of a lull, and then, other Black filmmakers came up in the 60s and in the 70s, and, Spike Lee and them came out in the 80s. But I look at their films, I look at the things that they were able to do, Haile Gerima, Julie Dash, and people like that, as sort of the blueprint. I look at, Charles Burnett, people like that. I also sort of, my process, I feel like, for when I'm thinking about like writing something new or rewriting or fleshing out ideas or characters, I dive into a lot of things that are just like culturally ours, because we have that sort of thread through. Like if you study it and if you know that, then who was sort of active in like Black cinema, making certain things a certain way. But it's not like our music, the history isn't as long and it isn't as connected and consistent, So I look at other things, I listen to certain people's music when I'm, when I'm dealing with a certain project or a certain idea. I read certain books. You know, a lot of things like that, because I feel like it helps me, like, I don't know, I feel like it grounds me. You know what I mean? It makes me feel like, because so much of cinema, American cinema specifically, even what they call third world cinema or foreign cinema, sometimes I feel like it's better to look at. Wong Kar-wai is actually one of my favorite filmmakers, and he's you know, a Chinese filmmaker. And so some of his film, In the Mood for Love, 2046, and there's another one that he's really like famous for. You ever want to look up his work and stuff like that. But I feel like you just get more perspective. You get like more ideas, you know, things that like sort of resonate with you more, you know, than like just like I can watch a million or more Hollywood movies and I might like certain things and stuff like that. But I'm like, but no, I feel like this needs to feel like this and look like this and sound like this, you know, and it can be hard depending on like what you're working on, to sort of create that framework for yourself, if that makes sense. It's not like our literature, I would say, or our music, like, you know what I mean? You have so much, I feel like, to draw from, but like with cinema is, it's a little more tough. And I think that for me, I just like tap into other things to sort of make sense of like my process or my work or my stories.
Yeah, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Now I want to go back a little bit, but first I want to ask you about October 21st, because I know you have a film debuting soon along with two other filmmakers in the city. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so I'm excited. It's actually going to be my first time showing a film in theaters. So I have, it's going to be a triple feature, if you will. They're all short films, so it's not going to be like 3 feature-length films, but it's myself, Terrell Williams, Danielle Deloach will be presenting our short films. Now, the film A Cold Kill that I directed and produced is a short crime drama about the murder of an older gentleman for his money. It's actually not so I say it's not my movie in that I didn't write it. Typically, I direct and produce what I write. Okay. But this was my first time directing somebody else's work. So it's a screenwriter from Virginia. He actually plays the older gentleman in the film. It was his work. He reached out to me about wanting me to produce the movie and direct it. So my first time out with that. I think, you know, I did a pretty good job, all things considered. And yeah, the other 2 films, there's a love story, and then there's a sort of a look into like millennial life and struggles that we all go through.
Dear Life, You Suck. That sounds like the movie.
Yes. Yes, that's it. So, you know, that first episode of that web series. And so, yeah, we're going to be presenting at the Ritz East on October 21st at 7 p.m. The films will also be released online that same day. So it'll be available for the weekend in the case that, you know, you want to have the virtual experience, you're not able to come out or what have you. So yeah, like I said, it's gonna be my first time. I'm excited about it. And yeah, it's on Eventbrite. Tickets on Eventbrite. 3-Piece Pictures presents, or 3-Piece Pictures. I'm sure if you look that up in Eventbrite, you'll see it. Also, if you follow me online or, you know, can find me online, I have the link up everywhere. So
nice. Yeah, we'll put links to all you online and to the event as well, to the premiere.
Cool, thank you.
Now, so you mentioned writing, directing, and producing. The first project you worked on was about youth in the military, right? And this is in high school. So, yeah. So how do we get there? How do you end up working on that project? And why that particular subject too?
So it's funny because I sort of fell into filmmaking as a teenager. It was not something that I always liked, I think, watching movies and watching TV. When I was younger, I think sometimes when I talk to people now, I realize I watched a lot of TV and a lot of movies, like some things certain people haven't seen. I watched Nick at Night religiously as a kid and things like that. So like I've seen a lot of like even older shows and stuff like that. But that was it for me when I was younger. I always wanted to be a lawyer. From the time I was in 3rd grade, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I think it was like two reasons. It was like, one, I learned about Thurgood Marshall around that time, and I was like, oh, I want to do something like that, you know. And 2, just to keep it a bean, I'm from Philly, and a lot of people I know get caught up with the law. So I was like, we need somebody, we need a lawyer in the family, So I wanted to be a lawyer from third grade, and that was my focus. Like when I was in high school, I was like, all right, I'm gonna apply to colleges that have law programs, and I'm gonna go to law school, and that was all I was gonna do. But when I was a teenager, my mom got me in a couple things to, keep me out of anything that could have been unsavory. And I myself, I think after a while, especially around that age, around like 16, I was like, all right, I'm a couple years out. I'm going to go to college because that's what's going to be like my ticket out, So I was like, I got to stay focused. And, we all know, city life, kids can get into anything and everything. And I just wanted to stay focused so I could get to college,
Right. Get out of here.
So I was just like in a lot of programs. So it was like, if it was something I liked or something I was interested in, I just was like, all right, I'm going to do it, And one of those programs happened to be a documentary history project for youth. And it was run out of Scribe Video Center, which is still in West Philly. And so they do it, I believe, every year where they teach kids how to make a documentary for the first time. And they pick a subject matter for you to focus on. And so their focus that year was military and, young people and the effects of war and military on young people. And I just happened to join the program. And it was about a year. And I really enjoyed the process. I really enjoyed the program. We talked to a lot of vets. It was my first time really talking to a lot of vets, Vietnam vets, some Iraq. There were always some Iraq war veterans, at that time. And I just really enjoyed the process and talking to them. And, a lot of them were appreciative of us giving space for them to tell their stories and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, this might be, something I minor in or whatever in school. So I was still on track, on the law track. I was like, well, maybe I'll do this as like a minor or, as a hobby type of thing. And then when I was applying to colleges, I talked to a lot of lawyers and law students, and they all discouraged me because they were like, because I was looking to apply to schools that had the 3-in-3 programs where they offered, you go into school, you go in undergrad pre-law 3 years, and then you go right into law school for 3 years. So it's 6 years as opposed to probably like 8,
Yeah.
And so I was looking into all of that, and I'm talking to a lot of them about, my goals and what I want to do and da-da-da. And they were just like, don't waste your undergrad doing pre-law. Like you can do anything in undergrad and go to law school. And so I'm like stuck, like, well, what the I
wanted free time on my hands.
Like, what am I about to do? And so, I came back to like film and stuff, and I was like, oh, well, you know what? I mean, I did like that. And, quite a few of the schools that I was looking into at the time had film programs. So I was like, all right, let me just go ahead and do this and see what happens. And sure enough, I really took a liking to it. And like, that's the space I've been in ever since then. And like, I have not gone to law school yet. I mean, it's still a possibility, but like, I never got back around the law. It was just like film from there on out.
Right. Now, when you all, when you go to Scribe Video Center, when you all interview the people in the military, are they coming to Scribe? Are you going out to them? Like, what does that even look like as a teenager? I mean, and you're doing this after school, I'm guessing as well?
Yeah, like I think for the most part, it was on the weekends. It was like maybe 1 day or 2 days out the week where it might have been after school, but I think for the most part, it was on the weekends. And technically, like Scribe, I think technically was like my first on paper job because they paid us technically like, as student filmmakers, like, I guess they had it set up in their system to where they were able to do that. And so like, it was like my first time. And it was like, oh, I can get paid and I can get paid doing this. Like, this is a career for some people. So,
any idea what you got paid? All right, so I'm asking these questions because I think the teenage. All right, so my theory is that if you catch a black teenager, black kid around 14, 16, you're gonna figure out what they want to do with their life if you pay attention to them in that time.
Yeah.
And so, and your story is interesting to mine. Like poetry, for me, I get paid for it by the time I'm 16. And so it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. Yeah. So that's why.
Change your perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly. So no, that's just why I asked. Like, was it? You said it was your first job, and like, just I don't know if you obviously you may not remember what the pay was like or anything like that. Or
it was
just
technically my first on paper job. So I had jobs before that, like, but it was like always like just cash handed to me for like whatever, babysitting, or I always had a little something going on since I was like 10. I always found a way to make some money. Not illegally. So
right.
thankfully, thankfully I stayed out the way. I had enough solid old heads in my life that I never got into nothing too crazy.
In case you did need to be a lawyer down the line, you had to be prepared. So. Yeah.
So yeah, Scribe was I believe my first like on paper job, and I believe it at the time minimum wage was like $5.25 because it was $7.25 or still is $7.25 in Pennsylvania today. So, but that's how long they haven't changed the damn minimum wage in the state. But it was like $5.25 at the time. But it was still, I'm like, that was money. It was like 20 hours a week or something like that. I was like, what? I was buying what I wanted. It was a great time. But also, besides that, yeah, they did let us they had people come to Scribe for us to interview and stuff like that, but we also went out in the field, so they took us through the whole process. It was like from pre-production all the way out to post, and how we wanted to present our final film for the premiere that they had at International House, which is no longer open in West Philly. So they took us through the whole process. And it was good, because I learned everything from start to finish. I didn't know nothing about nothing at that time, and they were still using DV tapes at the time. Like, this was right before everything went digital. So it was like, we had to learn how to convert DV over to digital in the editing process. So it was dope. They showed us everything from start to finish.
I don't know why, but I still have DVs around here from when I was in college. I had like 3 or 4. Yeah. Doing interviews.
I feel like it's important to still hold on to stuff. Like, I still got like my small collection of DVDs, and I plan to get like a VCR/DVD player again one of these days, because I feel like it's good to still just have things physically,
Yeah, I bought one last year for we had videotapes from like 96 through probably like 2002. My mom bought a video camera mid-90s, and we didn't have anything to play them on. And so had to do a whole search.
Gotta be able to look at your archives and everything. Yeah,
exactly. I had to go to a bunch of thrift stores just to find some VCR. Like, it was a process. Yeah,
I'm sure.
So you start with Scribe in your teenage years, but you like writing stories even as a kid, right? So this writing part starts pretty early. Who's reading your stories? Who are you sharing your stories with as a child?
What's funny? I'm not religious anymore, but I grew up Christian. I grew up in Black church, and we were actually a non-denominational church. So we went, and that was an experience in of itself, because we went to all of the other churches, Baptists, Church of God in Christ. We had sort of interactions with all the other sort of sectors, because we were non-denominational. But I used to write stuff. So I guess whenever I wanted to tune out or whatever, I would just start writing in church. Like, I would put my little paper over the hymn book and write out my stories, and I would tell my mom, and she'd be like, "Oh, you should let so-and-so see this," or whatever, one of the deacons or like, the ministers or whatever. And they were like, "Oh, this is so nice." So they would like, at some point in time, they would like, let me go up front to like read my stories or whatever. So, that was that early on for me. It was like my mom and people at church.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was like 5. So
it's just so amazing to me. Even so, I definitely grew up in the church too. I think about, after a while, I realized, my first poem was giving an Easter speech in church, right? That's my first performance.
Yes.
But I think it's amazing because, so not to get into parenting, but one thing, because I don't have any children, but one thing I think about a lot is like those little moments that may not have meant much for the adults. And maybe they did understand, like maybe they understand this little bit of exposure can let Eboni know if she likes this or not. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so to say like, because so it could be the scenario, right? Because I'm going to assume that you're writing on the church program. You're in church, you got the hymnal. And so, definitely. Right? And because I still have poems from church programs, because I'm the same. Like I can't to this day, I can't, if I go to church and I hear a sermon, I can't tell you what that sermon was about. I can tell you how I felt, and then I can share with you what I wrote during the sermon. Like It's a good time to write because nobody's bothering you. You can like
Right.
just go in.
It is. That's real.
And so before the parent can go like, they can get mad. Oh, I can't believe you're supposed to be listening to the sermon, blah, blah, blah. But like the parent who encourages you in what you're doing, even as a child, it's just like, it's just so important. It's these little keys, you know what I mean, that like really can like mean a lot down the line, long term.
That's so real. That's so real because it was like church first. And then literally like, I think like every teacher I had from like kindergarten through like 9th to 10th grade was like, you need to write. I thought I was going to be an author for a long time too, because people always enjoyed reading my writing. They always felt like I was a little more advanced than, you know, whatever level I was supposed to be on. And I just used to write all types of stuff. Like I used to write, like I wanted to be a journalist, I think at one point in time, and I'm like finally getting the opportunity to do like contributor work for like local, like little news media outlets, which is cool. But I used to like write articles. I used to read newspapers a lot, and, like write down my little 2 cents about it. I don't want to say, I never like to say that I wrote poems because I just feel like poetry, but like it's such a like a certain type of thing. So it's just like pieces, you know, like smaller pieces that I would write. But yeah, I used to write all types of stuff. And so like they always encouraged me though. I always had like adults, like I said, in my life that was like, you need to write, you know, you're good at this. You need to, you know, get your grammar together, get this together, get that together. But you know, you're good at this. So yeah, it's the truth. I would agree with you. It's just like those smaller moments, or like, you know, like that little bit of time, or like just that push, like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I can, because you don't know what you're doing when you're a kid. You know, you just doing stuff because to do it, because it's something to do, or it might be something you like to do, but it's not nothing you're thinking about deeply. You know, it's not like, oh, this is something I can do, or, you know, this is something I will do at one point in time. And I haven't ruled that out. I really haven't ruled out. Like I do more screenwriting than anything else these days. I haven't ruled out potentially writing a book at some point in time. I just don't know about what, you know. And I feel like if I do ever get there, you know, it'll be, you know, I'll know, you know, at that time. But yeah, it's important, man. I feel like even like I said, teachers, and there were certain programs that I was in, where you just get that encouragement. You need that. Like kids need that. They need so much guidance and attention and like, you know, that just reassurance, you know, along the way. And like, I feel like so much of it is missing them, but it needs to be, it needs to be reinforced and supported. And, you know, shout out to all the teachers that's still working, especially in the Philadelphia school district. Y'all knowing, right. You know, you making, you know, making $1.15 for sure. But yeah, it's needed. It's needed. It's like it'll change a child's life. You know, it changed my life for sure.
Oh, for sure. Now, when you were a kid, did you play any instruments or anything? Play any sports or anything? What were your other hobbies?
I didn't. I had never gotten into sports, which is hilarious. I just always supported my siblings in sports. Okay. My brothers played football and ran track a little bit, and you know, played baseball for a little bit. One of my sisters played basketball, and then both of them ran track. So I just supported them in it because I just didn't. I personally, as a child, I didn't feel like I was good at any particular sport. And I was like, that's not my thing. But I did play the flute when I was younger. I played the flute for a few years. I got really good over like faster than my band. So it was in middle school, and my band teacher, because I came in middle school, because it was like a school that was K to 8th, but I came there just for middle school from my neighborhood elementary school. And normally they didn't start people, you know, after a certain grade level, because they were like, you're not going to be able to, you know, catch up and da-da-da. But yeah, I learned my instrument because I was hyped, and I was like, oh, this is something new to do. And yeah, I was good enough to play. I played in the band, like, you know, my last year that I was there. So it was cool. I actually wanted to keep going in high school, but like I switched to, so I went to 2 high schools. In my first high school, they didn't have like a musical program. And then my second high school, it was just like, when God that was there, I was like, Then he turned me off. I was like, I'm not gonna deal with this shit. And I gave it up. But I felt, you know, it's funny, like seeing delving into like Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson's music, and also even seeing Lizzo nowadays. I'd be so mad because I'd be like, say I could have did that. I could have learn how to do that with the flute, because I feel like the last guy that I interacted with that was my second high school, the band teacher or whatever like that. He was just so he was so like, and you know, like you gotta play classical, learn how to do that and that type of shit. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And like, you know, like I want to do things that are interesting to me. And I feel like if I had just had somebody who was better, you know, in that space and was with me on that like level, I would have kept doing it, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to, when I listen to Gil Scott Heron and them, I'm like, you hear that flute going in the background, I wanted to be able to do that with the flute. I didn't want to play no damn Yankee Doodle and shit, you know? Like,
play in a bottle, right?
Yes, yes.
No, seriously, I can hear that flute too. Like I hear it in my head.
Yes,
so,
yes.
No, Yo Sky Heron, Lizzo. Thinking about Andre walking around Philly playing the flute.
Okay,
like, he's like
all
this.
right.
Yeah, that's wild. So, all right, you also made me think. So, our band director, we had marching band at the beginning of the year, and then we had it wasn't called classical. Concert band. So we had marching band. So everybody's in a marching band because we get to go in the field, you get to dance and all that. But then like concert band, you have to know how to play your instrument for real. And so that number got a lot smaller. But what was cool was that if you went to concert band, you also got to play in jazz band after a while. And so I made the concert band 1 year, but eventually I had a like real love for jazz because that's what our band director's favorite music was. And we sort of got there at the end of the year. But all right, so for your parents or I guess the adults around you or your parents, what were their hobbies and what were they doing for a living?
So I think my mom was the one who really like got into a lot of different things. She actually played the flute. She was actually the one who convinced me to play the flute, because I originally wanted to either learn how to play the sax or play the piano. And they didn't have the sax. That was the only reason why I ended up playing it, because I've always loved the saxophone, like just the way it sounds. I don't know. It just it's one of those things. But she played the flute when she was younger. My mom used to do all types of stuff. Like she's an artist herself. She won't tell you that today. She's still behind. One of these days I'm gonna get her to start drawing again. My mother is like one of the best illustrators that I've ever come across, and that's no bullshit, because I've other people who do similar things, who are illustrators in their own right, have said like I've never seen certain things like this. Or she's had, apparently it's a rarity in that particular art form to be able to do like animation or like things that are animated and to be able to draw portraits, and she can do both very well. And that was one of the last things she was doing before she just, you know, decided to not do things anymore. But she went to Kappa. She went to Kappa with Questlove and Black Thought, and she was close with Boys II Men because they all went at the same time. And she just did a lot of stuff. She did calligraphy and all types of stuff when we was younger. And then she just like fell off of things one day. I'm like, Mom, what in the world? All of these talents, all of this artistic ability, like what's going on?
Tell her we're gonna make her an Instagram page and start posting stuff.
She on Instagram, all them things. She in a whole nother space now. But I'm like, that's okay. I get it. One of these days I keep telling her, I'm like, you gonna draw me a portrait at least.
No, seriously, one day. Yeah, I was an art major when I started school. So to be able to do animation and to do portraits, those are two totally separate things. Like, yeah.
Right.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, I had to, you know what's hilarious? I had to tell her that she went to school with Black Thought. I don't know what we was talking about something one day, and I think Questlove came up with whatever. She said she remembered Questlove very well. She called him by, I forget his real name is, but she called him by his first name, you know.
Yeah, Mare or something.
Yeah. She like, I remember Amir because, you know, he had this particular hairstyle that he wore and stuff like that, and you know, drumming and things. So she remember him. Like I said, she was close to Boys II Men. Like when we was younger, she used to go to a lot of the concerts and stuff. Like when they was first starting out here, she would go a lot and got pictures with different people and stuff like that. But she didn't remember. I'm like, Mom, well, it's no way you didn't go to school with, like, I forget how we got into talking about it. It was like, he went to Kappa. I'm like, and they formed a group there. So I'm like, and she like, we was going back and forth for a while. And she like, oh, I think I know what you're talking about now, because she described him the whole other way. And I was like, yes, that was him. That was him. Like, yes. Like
That's
you knew all
hilarious.
of these people. Like you went to school with all of them. Like you went to school with all these people. So
Wow.
it's just funny. Yeah.
It is. It is. All right. You never know. That's yeah. I mean, somebody had to go to school. That time makes sense. Like I'm looking at thinking about the timeline. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, all right. But so what? Actually, I'll ask you that later. I want to know who you mentioned your mom, but who's one of the people who's been most influential in your life? This could be somebody, family, church, a stranger, but somebody who was just really like, kind of like maybe played a part or did a particular thing that really kind of put you on a certain path.
Oh man. Again, I think I'm a person that like it just depends on like what time in my life you're talking about. Like if you when I was like 8, it could have easily been like Stone Cold Steve Austin of The Rock, you know? But like I think it just depends. It just depends. Like I think earlier on, like I said in my life, it was probably like women I went to church with and grew up under. They always, it just was a certain way. There was no nonsense. They did whatever they came to church to do, but they also just had lives and experiences outside of it. And, it's funny because so much of the rhetoric that at least gets spewed a lot of the time in people's churches about like women being a certain way, needing to be submissive and stuff like that. I didn't grow up around that at all in nobody's church, So I think for me, it was good to see that and to have those experiences because I think I've carried that with me a lot in my life. Early on, that was like, important in my formative years to be like, I don't have to do this or do that or be like this, I think that probably when I was younger too, it was probably like I was around a lot more family when I was younger. So like older cousins, some of my aunts and things like that. And, I remember they like, how they dressed and how they, behaved and how they danced and, going to cookouts and things like that. And I, again, that sort of influence, I realized as I get older that like, they were kind of like the fly girls, when I was younger, because my parents, they were teen parents. So, my parents are like 50 now. And like, my aunts and uncles, like their siblings and people is around that age too. So, they introduced me, I think, early on to like, like early hip hop, salt and pepper and all that type of thing. But that was the vibe, that was the aura, and that was what you was gonna get, So I remember things like that. I feel like as I got older, it was probably like, it was a couple teachers. I think one of the only black male teachers I ever had, Mr. Edney. We post this on Facebook, he'll see it because we friends on Facebook now.
Okay, Mr. Edney.
I had him.
Mr. Edney, how you doing?
One of the only black male. He was one of the only black male teachers I ever had, but I had him in 4th and 5th grade elementary school, and it was like really, like it changed a lot for me because that was the first time I had. I think he might have been the first black teacher I had too in school, but definitely one of the only black male teachers I've ever had. Well, even into college, and it just like changed so much for me because he showed us roots in school. What? Like when we did book reports and stuff in school, it had to be on like Nat Turner or like people from our history. Like he talked to us like, like just real down to earth because he's from North Philly, but he went to Temple and then, he taught in the neighborhoods, and it was just really, it made such a like difference, like, and this is like early so like, we like, talking about Allen Iverson and all of them, going to the championship against the Lakers and stuff at the time. Like, but it made a difference. It made a difference, and it changed, I think, for me, like the way that I assumed education, how I thought it should look and what I thought it would be like, So, yeah, and then I think as I got older, it was probably just like different probably like men and women I met along the way. Like I said, I was in a lot of programs. I had a lot of people look out for me, tell me the truth about like, this is life. This is how things is going to go. This is, look out for this, do that, talk to this person. People in the neighborhood, people, so it was different people at different times.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the roots, you mentioned Boys to Men, you even talk about your parents sort of like playing hip hop. Question totally unrelated to your career. If you could put on a music festival, all right?
Oh, no.
If if you could put on a music festival and you can have any 3 acts you want, dead or alive, any mixture of genres, doesn't matter. Who would be the 3 acts at the top of the Eboni Zamani Music Festival?
KP, why are you gonna do this to me? First of all, you don't hear me. Not one question that you done asked me about favorites or a particular time. I'm like, it changes with me. That's hard to say. I feel like, oh man. So I'm gonna say this. This is gonna be my little cop out. This is probably as of recently, like, you know, things that I've been listening to, influenced by, working through, like, ideas I've been working through and stuff like that. That's what this 3 is gonna be based on.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say Teddy Pendergrass.
Okay.
Pop.
Oh shoot.
And right, throw him in there. And oh man, that is terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible because it's all right. Teddy, Pop. I don't know, and maybe Stevie. I've been listening to a lot of Stevie Wonder stuff lately. A lot of his stuff, going back and listening to, you know, Keys in the Song of Life, and, you know, all of it. You know, so yeah, that's gonna be my 3 for right now. But I feel like that's just, again, like, that's just where I've been at with things. Like, it could be so many people. It could be
That's a good 3. I'm gonna make it even more difficult though. Who's opening and who's closing?
Oh no. I would have Stevie close. Okay. I don't know. I don't know who will open. I don't know if we put Pac right in the middle to, like, break up the you know, we open with soul, close with soul type of things. Maybe Teddy opens. But yeah, it's a weird lineup. It's just like things I've been listening to or, like, influenced by recently stuff. Because I watched Teddy Pendergrass's documentary that came out on Showtime is actually one of my recent favorites. So,
I didn't even heard about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Got a new doc to watch. All right.
Sure.
There are no wrong answers there. There are no wrong answers at all. All
right.
So you're doing a lot of things. And one thing, I think, so Branch Normal in a way caters to high school students and people who are maybe thinking about changing career paths. With that, we always think about, but am I going to have time for these other parts of life? So how do you balance work with, like, family, friends, relationships, those other parts of life?
Everything.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like what's been working out and what's been most effective for me is just, like, scheduling my life out, like, seasonally. That has helped me because, like, I'm going into this transition right now because I'm like, oh, it's fall. You know, fall just happened for us, and I was wrapping up a couple projects because otherwise I probably would have started right as, you know, fall. Fall began, but seasonally, like, because typically with, like, film and media and stuff like that, there's a certain periods of time in the year where it's more work than not, you know, and that's usually when the weather's more conducive to things, especially on the East Coast. Like, a lot of work ends up being in New York, and stuff like that. So, you know, there's more stuff happening in, like, you know, certain times of the year than others. So you just be like, okay, this time of year I'm mainly going to be working and I'm not going to be as available. And so, like, for film schedules, it's typically like 12-hour days, 12 to 16-hour days. It's been about 10 hours with COVID. So, like, if you're working during COVID, then it's not as hectic as it normally has been. But traditionally, it's about 12 to 16-hour days, Monday through Friday. Sometimes they might go into Saturday, and then you'll have your weekend to kind of, like, do anything that you need to do or pay your bills or, you know, feed your dog or whatever like that, and you right back into it. And that's typically 3 to 6 months. And sometimes it can be a little longer. But I feel like, you know, working on, like, whether it's industry stuff or somebody else's projects and then working on my own work, I do the same thing. So I may work for hire for other people and in the same sort of season or time of year be working on my own stuff. So putting together my own crews and stuff like that. And I feel like this time of year, what helps me is being more focused on and intentional about writing and reading and things like that, because season changing affects me. You know, like I can easily get depressed when it's dark at 3 o'clock and the sun is not out all day. Like, I'm a person that like I'm a summer baby. Like, I need the sun. Like, I need, you know, like I'm just like, and so the winter can be very difficult for me. But if I'm, you know, intentional about like just surrounding myself with like what I need at the time, you know, I'm engaging more with family and friends at that time, making more time in my schedule intentionally for that, making more time to take care of myself during that time of year. Then it's easier for me to navigate that the season. But yeah, seasonally, I just had to like, I used to try scheduling myself out, certain days, certain weeks, and just trying to do my to-do list every day would just be like out of control. I would barely get half of it done. So I think you have to just prioritize for yourself, you know, as far out as you can, and then, you know, always make room for like emergencies or something happening or life happening. You know, what makes sense for you. But I think the balance can look like working for 2 weeks straight and not seeing anybody, and then 2 weeks afterwards being intentional about seeing everybody, and again feeding your dog and taking care of yourself and stuff like that. But I think that you sort of have to find that balance your way. I don't think there's anybody, they lying if they tell you like I have the perfect balance and the perfect schedule, because every day is different. You know, something is going to take precedence over the other. Something's going to be more of a priority than the others on different days. So I think you just have to like find your flow and like what works for you, but do your best not to let one or two things or certain areas of your life, you know, weaken or you're not giving enough attention to that over others. Because I mean, especially with work, even if it's something you love to do, that can't be your whole life. So, you know, you got to find ways to, like I said, with like film and media, it can be difficult because the days are so long and the schedules can be so crazy and intense. But even in the midst of that, you know, like I think it's easier if you don't go from one project to another right afterwards. You know, you might do one project and then, you know, even if people are calling you, like, I'm not available, you know, give somebody else up so that, you know, like, all right, cool. I'm spending this time, get myself together, recuperating or whatever, and then get back in the swing of things. So it's always going to be there. I feel like as long as people want to be entertained, as far as our field of work, my field of work is like, you know, there's always going to be work. So even if you turn down a particular project, a job, a position, you can get right back into it some type of way.
Right. There's some stability for sure. So I agree with what you're saying. Somebody says they have the perfect balance. They're probably not telling the truth. And so, but with that, we have this idea of work hard, play hard, which doesn't mean rest or like fun either. Like sometimes you can play so hard, now you still are tired going back in to work and you really haven't like centered yourself. And so, I just like hearing about what even like just the basic things people do or some of the smaller things people do. Like as I mentioned, we were talking earlier, for me during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time just in gardens and like arboretums, places where it's just water. Like I realized that like hearing water flow really calms me down. Now in my apartment, like when I let the water run, like that's a problem. But if I go find some creek in nature, then no, that's not a problem at all. And that really like just calms me down. Even like talking to my aunts, I realized I went years without really talking to my aunts the way I should. No beef or anything, just like not picking up the phone. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, just life. And I realized like in my mid-30s now, I'm like, I really like talking to my aunts, and that really calms me down. That recenters me as well. And so I just like hearing about these different practices, different like small little tidbits, because we're kind of taught how to work, but we're not taught how to relax sometimes. So
we like, and I think like that's a cultural thing for us. Again, like absorbing other people's narratives about like us being lazy or shiftless or things being handed to us or being on government assistance. The reality is that none of that would be the case if we was paid when we was old to begin with. And outside of that, who's worked harder than Black people in America? If we want to keep it all the way, so it's just like I think detaching, I think we're starting to see it now, everybody being connected online and platforms like the Net Ministry and stuff like that, like, catching on and gaining popularity.
Sorry,
Like,
what was that?
The Net Ministry.
What's that? All right.
Oh, I love them. They listen, they all about rest. They like, listen, we need to rest. Specifically, Black people of color, learn to rest, learn to take time for yourself, learn to walk away, don't work yourself to death. They have great stuff. They're on Instagram, on Twitter, stuff like that. They always posting like, songs or poems and little quotes. But that's their thing. And I'm like, it's the truth though. We will work ourselves to death, I guess, to prove a point. It's like, we know we can work. Would America be in the state of being that it's in if Black people wasn't working? Absolutely not. So we just have to learn to, take care of ourselves, to rest when we need to. Like, the job is going to be there. Whatever else is going to be there. You're not going to be here if you don't take care of yourself, So.
Okay. NAP, N-A-P, the NAP Ministry, Rest is Resistance. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I love their platform. I be like, I need the reminder sometimes. I tap in, I be like, y'all right. Like, yes, I do need to go lay down. I do need to take a minute. I do need to. Yes, absolutely.
No, that's real. Woo. All right. So with that, so to talk about your work a little bit more, we talked about a cold kill, but what's one of the projects you're most proud of as far as projects you've done?
My own work?
Yes.
That's a good question. I've been working so much sometimes, and that's funny. We're just talking about that. I work on one project after the other so often. I think to date, one of them might be the short film I was able to put together called For My Homie. It was like 1 and 2, but I really like part 2 because that was like the most extensive short film I had at the time. Film I had done at the time on my own. So I had a large cast, a large crew, multiple dates. I had to get a lot of things together. And it was something that I wrote originally with just guys that I grew up with in mind, when I wrote it. And for the most part, it came together well. He had issues with audio, so the sound isn't great, which is unfortunate because I feel like it's one of those things that if the audio was there, like it should have been, it would have really been one of the ones that I would have yes, Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that was as far as what's completed, probably one of the ones that I'm most proud of. I think right now, just what I'm working on, the various documentary projects I'm working on, I feel like I'm in the space where these are all personal in some form or fashion for me. And I don't know, even as difficult as it's been during COVID to do certain things, I'm just excited about how it's going to turn out. A lot of things have just been even down to the wire, coming together for it. And so I got a lot of good, clean, and I'm just I'm in pre-production and very early development with all of them. So there's nothing out just yet. But yeah, just talking to Black people locally about their experiences and what they're going through and challenges and things like that. I actually have a short doc called it's actually a part of a larger anthology that'll be coming out of the collective I'm a part of, SIF Media 215, called COVID 1619. And
what's the collective called again?
SIFT Media. So SIFT stands for Sisters in Film and Television. Media 215. And we have an anthology coming out through WHYY called COVID 1619, where we spoke to Black and brown people in the area about what we call the dual pandemics of COVID and racism in America. And for my particular piece, I spoke to 3 different Black people about their experiences during 2020 and what that was like. So community organizer, nurse, and local sanitation worker and community advocate. And it was just really interesting talking to them about their perspectives and everything. But I'm excited for that. That's going to come out on WHYY sometime in the next couple months, I believe. So, and it looks good so far. That teaser is actually on my production company page. That's at Pearls Girl Productions on Instagram. you can see that teaser. So I'm excited about like this documentary work that I'm in right now, and like that all coming out when it's ready. Like I'm just like, oh yeah, this is like, okay, you know, like I'm in a good space, and I feel like I'm right where I need to be with this work, and even having to pivot because I hadn't planned to really work on this yet, but it was like narrative was like a no-go last year, you know, like just trying to get so many things together. But like documentary, especially if you can like interview people outside with like a small crew of people, it's like, oh, okay, I can do this right now. So let me just go in this direction and see what happens.
Nice. Do you know Sojourner?
Sojourner.
Hebe. Yeah, if you knew her, you would know her by first name too. We don't meet a lot of sojourners.
Got you, right. I'm like Sojourner. Because I don't know, you know, like I feel like I see people names around, but like, and I might know a person like in passing or something like this. I'm like, I don't know, do they got another like, you know, but I feel like I might have seen the name in passing or something like that.
You all will work together in the future. I'm going to put that out there.
Okay.
Sojourner Hebe, I met her as a poet, but she does a lot of she's a journalist. But I think you all will be working together sometime soon.
Okay.
Definitely.
Cool. I'm always excited about, you know, meeting other artists and writers and things like that, seeing what we can come up with and do together. So that's cool.
Got you. Now you mentioned, I'm just going to go through some of these things, and I want you to just talk more about these. I told you I had a lot of ground to cover.
I know. I was like, "Oh, we talking?" KP, like, we gonna get this. I'm like, okay.
So I mean, for me, Branch Normal was like, I'm gonna get a haircut one day. My hair's about to grow out again. For me, so we talked about family tree research, right? So what I got to in family tree research was like, I wish I could just like hear my grandfather talk for an hour. I wish I could hear my great grandmother's voice for an hour. I wish I knew what they thought about the flu in 1919. You know what I mean? I wish I knew.
Right.
We talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? But in Arkansas, you had the Elaine massacre, which Ida B. Wells writes a book about the Arkansas riots that happened in Elaine, which not far from where my grandfather was at the time. And I'm like, I just wish I knew his thoughts on this thing that happened in his life. And so with that, I'm like, we have the technology in 2021 to just record each other and get that in real time and have that for later generations or for whoever wants to hear it down the line. And so, and that's why I just like want to like talk in really long form instead of like these snippets to really get like our full like way of thinking, you know, in modern time and like be able to pass that along.
Yeah, that's real. That's real because it's like, as long as they don't cut the internet off anytime soon, it's like, yeah, that'll be the benefit of people coming after us, that they'll always be able to like, you know, they just look you up, like, you know, and be like, oh, this is what they sounded like. This is what they look like. This is what they thought. This is what they stood for. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll have to talk to you about this because I have all the files. I just have to figure out how to get them on some type of drive that I can mail those out to each person being interviewed. But that's a part of it as well. So anybody hearing this, there should be other files around. For sure. But yeah, so you mentioned that you were recently worked on the crew for Mare of Easttown, which is on HBO Max right now. I just watched the first 2 episodes. That show is crazy, really like stressful to me and sometimes, but like, oh yeah, I'm glad that happened. No spoilers here. You mentioned Pearl's Girl Productions a few minutes ago. You have Easy Exposures, which is your boutique photography company. So yeah, talk about any of this. Like you have a lot of exciting things. You have a lot of exciting things going on. What you say?
I have too much going on, and that's really my problem right now. And for anybody, like you said, for anybody listening, anybody who's looking for work or to be on team, please reach out because it's a lot. I've always been very ambitious, sometimes to a fault, and I'm definitely in that space right now with like going from artist to entrepreneur and really like making that transition to be able to sustain myself as an artist in the city, because there's so much that needs to be done in that space to really like support individual artists and small arts organizations, which I'm working on in my own capacity and have been the last year with Isaiah Thomas's Arts and Culture Task Force, Councilman Isaiah Thomas. And we have a report that's available to the public online if you want to find out more about that. But yeah, I've been doing a lot. So I started the boutique photography company because so many people I knew that I did film or media and knew I had a camera, and people would call me like, hey, I got this engagement coming up, or I got a baby shower coming up, or can you come shoot this, or can you come shoot this? I was like, might as well make this like a little business or whatever, So that's been cool. It's like, I end up working with other people, other like freelancers. I'll bring them on with me, or sometimes I may work with other people on their particular, shoots or whatever like that. I just shoot a lot of different things. Like I was just at a wedding out in New Jersey a couple days ago, doing some work. So it's like, it just changes. It just depends on like, what's needed in the region. It's always cool, especially to be a part of people's sort of celebratory times. And that's what I've been doing with that.
And you're doing photography for Temple as well too. I don't know if I'm supposed to mention that, but you're doing is that correct? I thought you were doing. I literally, maybe I was mistaken. I thought I saw football, Temple football, but maybe not.
No, that might. I mean, it could have been somebody I worked with or something else. Like I don't have a contract with them currently, but if y'all looking for somebody,
got you.
But yeah, I think like the most recent just like photo video work as far as like things being out online places was like I worked with Stephanie Molson, who was another local filmmaker. I was like her second shooter in person on it was a shoot for a Joe Biden campaign like commercial, and we got to shoot a black cartoonist. It was my first time meeting a black cartoonist. She worked for what is it, the New York Post or whichever one, the paper out of New York.
I think New York Post is correct.
Yeah. So that was dope. Like just getting to record her, go through her process, and I think that's still on their Instagram page. But yeah, so looking for more work, always open to new clients, baby showers, family portraits, or what have you. But work is up on my websites for anybody who's interested, or I know the holidays is coming up, so need some photos, reach out to me, photos, videos, reach out to me. For my production company, that was like out of necessity, but it was just a way to really situate myself as an artist and to say, I have stake in something locally, and hopefully I can get some support, some funding, some resources more easily funneled to myself and some others in the region. So like for the most part with my production company, I'll write, direct, and produce my own stuff, and the producing is coming out of the production company. But I also have people who come to me. So far it's just been people I know. Like I said, the screenwriter out of Virginia was like the first person I didn't know personally who reached out to us. But yeah, just other Black people who have ideas and stories and things they might be interested in. So like TV, film, digital. We haven't gotten into TV yet. It's mostly been film and digital, short form content. I'm just moving into like feature length stuff. What's up?
Not to cut you off, but I want you to walk me through production a little bit, right?
Okay.
So particularly because I like for the other part of Branch Normal, I haven't mentioned this to you, but when I was a substitute teacher for 2 years, and I noticed that students would hear titles sometimes, but not understand like what's in that. So for me, even gotcha. I would have been a sociology major in college had I understood what sociology was, right?
Gotcha.
At 37, I like the Philadelphia Negro and I understand what Du Bois was doing. But when I was younger, all I knew about Du Bois is really souls of Black folk and double consciousness. I didn't understand him as a sociologist. So when you talk about production, because I think we can also get a pretty good idea of what photography is and what you're doing on photo shoots. Production, not so much, because you mentioned so a more specific question, what does pre-production look like and what is production look like? And I think you mentioned post-production as well. So what do those things mean?
So yes, when you went to make a movie or a show or media proper, there is, I mean, you know, there are shortcuts these days, TikTok and so many other things. People, you know, go viral with just quick clips and you know, phone camera and things like that. And you can do that if you want to, if that's what you're looking to do. But as far as like a full-fledged movie or like TV show or series, digital series, there's a process, right? So when you're starting out, the process is always starting with the story and writer. So the screenwriter is really the point of inception. It's like the idea has to be there, the story has to be there, it has to be a good story, it has to go through multiple rounds of writes and rewrites. You gotta have, you know, multiple readers. I feel like people who read who would be in your potential targeted audience for whatever your story is. When I have people read who are also writers, who can also give you feedback about, you know, where your story is going, character development, things like that. And that in of itself can be a long process depending on, you know, what it is you're writing. If it's sketches or something like very short form or something like that, that's not as long of a process. But again, like a show, a film, that in of itself can be a long process. So that's where we starting. And then, you know, if you're a person who wants to be multi-titled, like myself, it's like that all of this, you in this from start to finish, you know? So I always say my vision, just to quickly tap in and I'll tap back into this, with like my production company locally in Philly is like, to train and also like equip and get as many Black people into film and media production and making as possible, because there's so many jobs, there's so much opportunity for a lot of different things. And I do feel like it's important for us to be just as important as it is for us to see ourselves on camera. I feel like almost every hand that touches anything behind the scenes should be us as well. And it's difficult because a lot of us don't know a lot about this career path and don't know about, like, there are 499 jobs on a standard, like big production, 499 jobs. And so, you know, people are accustomed to, like, you know, oh, they might know something about writing or understand, like, oh, okay, you got to write the script, you got to write the story. And, you know, director, producer, you know, camera person, they might know something about an editor. But there are so many more people, so many more moving pieces, and so many more people that are needed. And some skills are transferable, right? Because if you are somebody, for example, who is an electrician or has gone for that trade, electrical is a big part of film. It's like, y'all do all of the lighting, you do all of the technical electrical equipment on a standard film set, you know, for example. So yes, like there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of moving pieces at any point in time. We can do a whole nother conversation on that end of itself. But to get back, so you're starting with the story, starting with the writer or writers or writer's room. If you got that kind of money, or the production got that kind of money, writer's room. And then, you know, going through the story, going through the edits, and then whatever. So what I'll say about scripts too is that there's technically no real final script. It's usually like what everybody agrees upon at the particular time. So whatever last okay that the writer might have gotten from the showrunner or the director or the producer, or the last okay that the writer's room might have gotten from the director or producer, that's the script that they're going into, you know, pre-production with. Pre-production and development, sometimes they're called the same thing, sometimes they're synonymous. I feel like the development process, screenwriting and getting a story right, is a part of the development process, but pre-production is like, okay, now we're gearing up. We got the story, we got the script that we want to go into production with. Now, okay, what do we need? If this is, so for example, if this is just, let's say it's just a Modern Stories 2021. Okay, we need wardrobe. What are our characters going to wear? Where are we getting the clothes from? Who's going to style it? Again, electrical, what is it going to look like? What are the lights going to look like? What equipment are we going to need? How much power are we going to be using? With camera, you know, what type of cameras are we using? What type of lenses are we using? Are we pulling focus? Are we, focusing in on a particular part of a person or a scene, and then focusing on another part and pulling focus? I try not to use too much jargon because, and then, it's just so many different things. Okay, casting, right? Like we got the script. Who are our actors going to be? Who's going to bring the characters to life? Casting directors being brought in, or the director may cast on their own. Who's being brought in? How many rounds of auditions? Who's going to be our final pick? What's their chemistry like with, when one actor comes in to read for one part or one character in the story with another, what is their chemistry like? Because you might like one actor or one actress for particular roles, but they have to have good chemistry together in order for the scene to work, or the scenes to work. It's so many different things. There's so many different things. The sound guy. We got to have good, clean audio, my editor who's going to edit the entire show or the entire film, and they need assistance. They need other people because, there's so many moving parts with editing, who's doing hair and makeup, because somebody always got to be doing hair and makeup, down to like the caterers. Who are our craft services? Craft services is just film lingo for caterers. Who's feeding the crew day and night? Because the one thing I will say about film is, if you like to eat, it's the job for you. One thing they're going to do, because they know they work you long hours. They know they work you long hours too long. So from the time you could be on the set from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. until 8 p.m. and they call wrap for the day, that, the director said, all right, we're good. That's our last take. Everybody can go home. There's going to be food all day long, So, and a lot of stuff with like, with industry stuff, with Hollywood stuff or industry stuff is you may have to be a part of the unions or get some sort of certification or license. But I think the good thing about like alternatives to Hollywood is that in the independent world is that not necessarily, My leg just went out.
All good.
I don't want to mess up your
We only got a couple more questions anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate that. Let me see if I can try to brighten up the screen really quick. But there's so much stuff, there's so many things that you can do, so many jobs. And then we go, that's pre-production. That's getting everything geared up. And then the actual production is actually recording the show or the movie, whatever that may be. And that's for however long everybody's agreed upon the show being or needing to be. So all right, turning this back up. There you go. Right. And being able to be quick on your feet with the stuff is always something. That's another thing about production. Something is always going to go left. It's like I think because there are so many moving parts with production and with like film media, any of that, there's always going to be something that goes left. So you just have to be prepared for like somebody in the camera department forgot the batteries. An actor got sick, the neighbors are pissed off, even though the locations department, I was in locations on Mare Easttown set. Locations department is all about securing the locations, anything that has to do with where the actual show or film is being shot, whether it's in a studio, on a sound stage, in an actual studio where, everything is constructed and, everybody's, the scenes are playing out there, or you actually, they actually film a actual church or a store or people's homes. Listen, y'all better reach out. Look, I know everybody Airbnb, and I'm like, a lot of these shows and movies be needing locations. I'm like, you willing to let your house be offered up for a location? Reach out to the production companies. So it's so much. It's so much. And I'm like, because there's so many more, and then post is just editing and getting everything sorted out. And then after that, you figure out marketing and distribution just to wrap it up. But there's so much opportunity. And I feel like when I look at a city like Philadelphia, with there being so many challenges here, specifically around work and so many of our folks being in deep poverty, it's like you get a real solid commitment for an industry like the one I'm in, and you can employ 500 people easily on one project. Like, what does that do for, the city and for people's families and for what we understand about, like, how people are able to take care of themselves and their families, and how does that combat, the gun violence issue we've been seeing, but like, stuff like that, So those are things that I think about.
When a few weeks ago, I guess Adam Sandler was taping here, doing a movie
They
here.
still taping.
I was still doing it. Yeah. So what I think about, so Adam Sandler was here, then the show on I don't even remember what network, but Andre and Jason Segel working on the show a couple of years ago. They were here for that. Law Abiding Citizen was done here, and of course the movie Philadelphia was done here as well. So just think about some of these. When you mentioned the mayor of Easttown, mayor of Easttown, is Easttown this? I'm from Arkansas, y'all, so I'm not born and raised in Philly. Is Easttown an actual town or city in PA?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, it's not just you. So what I will say about this show is that, because it might be ignorance and also partly arrogance about actually being from Philly, is that a lot of these little towns and stuff that's around the city and out in the counties, like unless it's on the news or something, or like they got a mall or a movie theater or something out there that we would go to, from here, we don't really leave the city to go nowhere. So it'd be like, people, I know people from, like back in the day, like before I knew, like Warrenton, PA, people tell me they from Wilkes-Barre. I'm like, where is that even at? Like, I don't know. This show, they had us way out in Delaware and Chester County, like further out in Delaware, Chester County than I ever been. I thought I had knew something about, like, and those are the areas right outside of, anybody that don't know, right outside of like West Philly and Southwest Philly. So I thought I had been out a few places, up in Darby, Yates and stuff like that. I thought I had been a few places. No, they had us way out. Okay. And yeah, Easttown is apparently a town out there, like, close to Chester, out in Chester County, like that way somewhere. So yeah, the showrunner. So the showrunner for TV shows, there is usually the person who usually they write the scripts, or they're acting as kind of like I'll say as the producer for the actual production. So they're on set, they're in charge of most of the time. It's like whatever they say goes as far as the show is going. The guy, the showrunner for Mare Easttown actually wrote the show, and he was the showrunner. So anything that sort of happened with, like, the show, what was all decisions made for all departments, camera, wardrobe, whatever, went through him. It's his story. So he's actually from Easttown. Okay. So we were out in like that area, like Chester County, Delaware County, and that's where he's from. That's where most of the show was shot. It was a couple of times we was actually in Philly, like in Germantown and West, but for the most part, the show was shot out in like Delaware and Chester County.
Okay, got you. And so, yeah, when you mention locations, maybe think about, like, I don't know why this particular scene stood out to me, but they're in the gas station in one scene, and like shit's coming, and like I'm like, oh, so in those situations, I guess you all are blocking off the whole gas station. I don't know if that's like even like a functional. I guess it's a functional gas station, but location. I don't know. I'm just thinking about the jobs. I'm just thinking about these different positions, right? Because I'm like, oh, like that gas station makes sense because it is a certain size. It's not too large. You can actually, the size of that gas station, you get all three of those characters in the same shot, really, in that gas station. And so like, I don't know, just thinking about that when you thinking about locations, because these aren't things I'm like necessarily thinking about watching a television show or movie show, right, that like, oh, this is a process of like, this has to be sought out and like sort of shut down.
Yes, it's a whole process with the department heads, the producer, the showrunners, for example. They all get together, and whoever's in charge of locations and their assistant managers in locations, they get the scripts. Okay, this is what we're looking for. They all do the script. They get together, do the script breakdown. So breakdown of any script is you're going over every single line in the script to say, if there's mention of like a blue scarf that the character needs to, have on in a certain scene, we need a blue scarf. That needs to go on the list for wardrobe. If they're at a gas station, like, let's just go with the gas station example. Okay, we need a gas station. Now that's on the list of locations. What type? Now you got to get into the details. You go like further down, like, okay, what type of gas station? Where is it located? Is it near a highway? Is it noisy? Is it off in a small town where nobody would really see it? What's the colors? Who owns, which are their ones for like what we're visualizing. Then people, sort of bring it up on their storyboards and things like that. Like, is this the type of gas station that you were thinking of? You know what I mean? People bring up like either animated things that people sketched out or like actual pictures of actual gas stations. Oh, then they make a decision. Okay, no, I do want it to look like this one. Okay. Now, can we find one in the area that looks like this? Or can we find one that's close to it? And then can we negotiate with the people who own it or run it to make it look like what we want it to look like in the show and to put it back? Like, I saw them paint one, like, for example, one of the houses that was in the show, I saw them paint the in and outside of these people's houses, put up windows and things that wasn't there. And they put it up just for their tape and then took it down and redid everything. So yeah, it's crazy. That's the art department. I forget about that. Set decorations and art department. That's their whole job. Whatever props is needed, whatever you want the set to look like, that's their whole job. From construction to bringing items in to making things look like, whatever the script calls for, the story calls for. Wow. It's a lot of jobs, man. It's a lot of moving parts, I'm telling you.
It is. That's exciting.
Exciting. It is exciting. It's exciting to see. That was my favorite thing on as far as my job and locations. It was just like go into one or go into a location before we had to shoot a week out or 2 weeks out. And seeing set deck and the art department do their thing, like, oh, what they gonna do this time? They gonna bring it. That one time they brought in whole bushes, there was no bush, no tree on these people's property. They brought in whole bushes to put in front of the house because that's what they wanted for the show. So it's like, it's crazy to see, man.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so my last question, really, because we can talk for days.
Yes, I know. I know you gotta wrap up.
So I'll make it two. So I know for the photography you were, I guess, recently featured on NBC 10. Is this correct?
Yes. So there was work that I actually did for my mother's nonprofit organization. I'm sorry, not nonprofit, but it's an arts program that she has under her company. And I think about nonprofit when I think about like arts and youth and
automatically.
But right. but yeah, that's an annual give back, a holiday celebration that she does in the neighborhood I grew up in. I grew up in Easttown every year. And NBC came out and covered it. So they used some of the footage that I grabbed of the event. And it was on there last year. So that was cool.
Got you. Now, what does it mean to be a Sundance Collab Community Leader?
So it's funny because right now I transitioned out of that recently, but Sundance Collab is Sundance's like educational platform. So it's a platform in space. I recommend it to people all the time, even in spite of my connection with the community leader portion, as like a great way if you're starting out. Or even if you're seasoned and you just need some, we all can use a tune-up or, can continue to learn and grow and get better at our craft. I think it's a great platform for writers, for directors, for producers, for anybody who's interested in that end of filmmaking or media making in general to, develop your skills, like, work on your scripts, have other people who are in similar positions, read your scripts, get your ideas out there, make good connections to, people that might be your advisors or your counterparts in your classes. Just have conversation and community with other people across the country. Some people are international, who are in similar spaces. Like I connected with one of the classes that I took on their platform. I was able to connect with a filmmaker out of Spain, Black filmmaker out of Spain, and Black filmmaker out of London, who's actually doing like great things on like horror over there, but like never would have made that connection otherwise. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I really like their platform. They always have like filmmakers who have work that's coming out recently, as well as those who are seasoned, come back and do talks and talk about their process and what to read, what to study, what books to read, just different things. So I really like their platform. I enjoy it, and it's one of the ones that I recommend for anybody who's starting out or interested in getting a filmmaking, or like I said, who's seasoned and just looking for resources or ways to get, plugged into certain things. It's not connected to the Sundance Institute. So like you wouldn't get plugged into the Sundance Film Festival or their whole organization. But, that platform, I think is a good space for those who do the type of work that I do or are interested in doing it. But as far as the community leader portion, I think that it was like a part of their like diversity initiative just recently. Like, so many organizations and companies after, the uprisings last year made their diversity pledges, their Black Lives Matter statements. And I think that it was just like their community leader portion was sort of a part of their, diversity inclusion sort of pledge. And it was just like myself and people from all across the country who were of various backgrounds, racially, ethnically, different sexual orientations and gender identities, who, they would just want us to get feedback on the Sundance Collab platform and what's happening. And, also had us read scripts weekly of, people who were, because you do have the option on the Sundance Collab platform to submit your scripts for feedback, from just other people and stuff like that. So it was a good process for me. I think reading people's scripts weekly just really helped me get all of my really helped me think more about my own script writing process and stuff like that, like what to look out for and what to make sense of. And then also it was just nice to be able to talk to other people, across the country who, again, are in similar places. A lot of us are independent and, trying to fundraise and, get our own funding up for our projects, or, might be second or third time out. What they consider to be first or second time directors is really people who have like a feature length project, like a feature length film or documentary that's out in the public somewhere that's done well, so you might have a lot of other work under your belt, but, you can sort of still be considered like emerging or mid-career as a filmmaker if you don't have a certain amount of like feature length work under your belt. So yeah, that was cool to be able to give feedback, honest feedback about what I was seeing on the platform, and, just how to improve things and, good to make those connections.
Makes sense. All right. So you mentioned the premiere of A Cold Kill, October 21st.
Yes.
You mentioned the COVID-16-19 project with WHYY.
Yes.
So we'll be looking at, you mentioned Cold Kill is going to be at Ritz East and also online on the same day available. Yes. So anything else we should be looking out for? Anything else you got coming up that you want to tell us about?
I think that's it for now. I'm just working a lot. I'm just excited about the work, like I said, that I'm doing on these documentaries I'm working on currently, and more to come. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to, like I said, expanding out in the city of Philadelphia and seeing what I'm able to bring here and what, collaboration is going to be like with other artists and Black creatives and things like that. Because that's my particular mission vision with my production company, just to be clear. I don't know that it should necessarily be everybody's, but it's mine. And I always say we produce motion pictures that explore the nuances of Black life in America. And that's been my goal, and will continue to be my goal with my production company and my own work. So.
Got you. Now, a key part I failed to mention so far, after high school, you go to Pace University, right? In New York. It's in New York City?
Mm-hmm. Yes, New York City. Manhattan, Lower Manhattan.
Oh, and this is where Actor Studio, the show, was filmed, correct? With James Lipton.
That's what most people know Pace from. When I went, so now Pace is pretty well known. Like when I say Pace University in New York City, people remember. But at the time I was going, people would be like, where, who, what? And I'd be like, oh, well, Actor Studio, James Lipton. Oh, yeah. So yeah, they did.
Right. I definitely used to watch all those, Robert De Niro, Dave Chappelle, like all of those. So a lot of Branch Noma is a sort of about college as well. So real quick, what was for somebody who's a junior in high school or a senior in high school, what information would you give them in preparation as they're preparing for college? Something they may not know to think about.
Oh man, there's so many things I wish somebody would have told me, right? So many things I wish somebody would have told me. But I think plan out your meals. Don't play around with your meal plan too much. And if you plan to play with your meal plan, but have some sort of income or some sort of plan for how you gonna feed yourself. Because listen, when I tell you the way I blew through that meal plan the first couple of years, that you just be hungry some nights. I gotta eat ramen, peanut butter and jelly, all that just to get through. Listen, like have something, like have a have a place you can get meals from or some discounts or something. Like it's important because you will get hungry in college. If you going through it for real, make sure you got the events calendar for the school. All right, which organization is having events? Go through the events and eat. Okay.
Those mixers, those intro meetings, that where it's gonna be pizza. I need that pizza.
Yes.
Can't be vegan today.
Okay.
Right.
That's for real, man. It was so many things. Really, like, get familiar with your financial aid office. Whoever is in there, make friends, because it's gonna be a headache. It's at some point, even if not your very first year, it's gonna be a headache at some point in time. Make a friend in the financial aid office. And let them be your go-to for, all right, listen, I'm having this issue. Okay, this scholarship ain't coming, this loan, I want to make sure I'm able to stay in school this semester. Like, what do I need to do? What else is coming up? Is there another loan or another grant I can apply for? Like, make a friend in the financial aid office. It'll be to your benefit, as time goes on. But yeah, that was my jam, because I feel like when I was in high school, middle school, that was like what really like had me locked in as far as college. There were so many, like they had like College Ready, and I think like White Williams Scholars. It was other programs in Philly at the time that like the first college I ever set foot on was Cheney University. I was in like 7th grade. And that should change my life, right? Because it was like this. Because I know I wanted to go to college before that, but it wasn't tangible, So we get to Cheney. They on the yard doing their thing, the frets and all that. I'm like, oh my God, you like having a movie experience as a kid. And then we go into the cafeteria. We go to the cafeteria. Tell me why they it's like a whole party. Like they got the jump off playing, like Lil Kim, like the jump off had just came out playing on the TV. I was like, oh, this is it. This is it for me. I'm going, period. Like, what are you talking about? So those programs were like so pertinent. And like when I was in college, it was so many things that I wanted people to tell me, so many things that I had to experience. So like in New York, I went to like quite a few high schools that was just like, the counselors like overwhelmed, and did like my volunteer hours and like the college counseling offices, because I feel like college was really like a game changer for me. And just like helped out a lot of the high schoolers. Like, listen, this is what you need to know. This is what you need to be doing. This is what you need to look at. So yeah, that was definitely, I used to have my list, because I'm like, what? Oh, we talking about college? So who going to okay. What's right. That? Like, So no, yeah.
That was definitely my brother. My brother's about 10 years older than me. That was that's the advice I remember the most. Become friends with your financial aid advisor. Like they should know you. They see you, hey Chris. Like, and so it was a point of like, I remember being on campus and like being with like fellow students, and they were like, who is that lady you just spoke to? I was like, oh, that's my advisor, yo.
Okay. That's the plug right there. Okay.
Exactly.
Listen.
I know her, she knows me. But yeah, I mean, because I was technically kicked out of school twice. Those slips under your door, like you got 48 hours to move out because your financial aid, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, hey, you know me. Hey.
Listen, I need to talk to you today, okay? Listen.
I'll wait. I got a few. Oh, you on the phone? I got a few minutes.
I can wait. Yes.
I mean, if you ever had to skip class to get your financial aid right, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Gets real sometimes, but yeah.
No. It did. It definitely, and it will. So yes, make a friend.
Sure. And my last question: what happens after school, right? Because some people finish school. We kind of almost teach kids like you do your 4 years of college, and boom, that job is ready for you, and you got it set. So like, what for you, and what happens afterwards for you, and how do you get from college to where you are now, or get to the first project that gets you on the path to where you are now?
So some people might get upset at this, and that's fine. I'll take that. I'll take that if there's upset. I don't feel like you need to go to college for an art degree, personally. I feel like you're better off getting a cert or learning the skills in some sort of apprenticeship type of space. You
This is the point of the branch normal. This is the point. This is the point.
It's the truth.
This is the point, because we have people that went to trade school. We have people that didn't go any school. We have people who dropped out of college 2 years in, whatever. It's a lot of different ways. So, all right, go ahead. Go back.
Yes, I feel like unless you're going to get, I think the exception would be unless you're going to get into art scholarship or like museum studies or something like that, right? I just wouldn't advise it. I've like the debt that I'm in still. Now, I will say this. I don't regret going to college, and it was an experience that I needed to have. And it grew me up a lot. I think you have to like decide for yourself. So all of my friends, I will say this, all of my friends who went to school for econ and finance are doing wonderful right now. So you might want to look into that. You get what you really want to do, you might want to minor in, and then like, get the degree in the other skill set so that it'll pay off right away. Because all of them had jobs right after college. They was good to go. The rest of us, on the other hand, it was a slippery slope for me after school. Like I came out of college with like, there was potential internships I could get into in New York City, but I'm talking about like the expectation was like working full time for free. And anybody who knows anything about living in New York City knows that's not even doable, even a little bit, unless you got family members or they got money or some sort of way you stay in New York for free. That's not going to happen. So I ended up having to leave, and because I just financially I couldn't handle it. And I actually only planned to come back to Philly temporarily. I had my eyes set on either Atlanta or LA. Because that's where work was. And I know one thing people always told me, friends of mine who went out to LA always told me, is that there's plenty of work, it might be expensive, but there's plenty of work, and what we're looking to do. And things just didn't end up panning out for me that way. And so I worked day jobs here. I've been back in Philly since I left New York. And I worked day jobs, and I just did what I wanted to do part-time. So I made movies or shows or worked on other people's work. I started to work on my own stuff independently, like part-time. It was just like, weekend warrior type of things. And for me, I wasn't sure for a while whether I was going to move again, depending on like, whether I had saved up the money and what have you. And I think like just the advent of social media and all of that changing, and seeing how Vine like being a thing coming out, and seeing how people were just able to do whatever they wanted to do where they were. And the fact that I came into like being a homeowner, so I have a house in Philadelphia. I was like, I'm not going nowhere. I was like, I'm gonna make it work from here.
Right.
And I have, and I still do. And I don't regret that, but it's difficult. Like that after college is, like I said, there are sure majors that you can take and you'll be good to go afterwards. But for anybody else, that straight shot, you're going to get this degree and that's going to equal this good, comfortable job with the benefits right afterwards. Right. I'm like, don't let them sell you them dreams. But I think what you have to do is just be comfortable with whatever your path is. And I think it's funny too, because sometimes I end up around a lot of people younger than me. Like I'm the oldest of my six of us, and I'm the oldest. And a lot of my cousins on both sides are younger than me, almost all of them. And so I've always been around people who are younger than me. And I think that like, I come into like, bringing people in as like production assistants or things like that who are like young, they like just out of college, or like maybe they didn't go to college or didn't finish, but they in their early 20s, and they like, yeah, so we gonna work on this, and I'm gonna come work on this with you, and this gonna take off, and then I'm gonna be on private jets tomorrow. No, beloved. It's funny because and I let them live, right? Because I remember it. Right. Like I remember the impatience that I feel like, you just have when you're young, like when you feel like this how things supposed to go. And I've done this, that, and the third. So this how it's going to go. it's hard. It's hard. And I feel like life sort of teaches you, like, be patient, keep calm, everything will happen in its own time when it's meant to happen. And I remember that frustration, and there were times that I wanted to walk away, but I think what's always sort of kept me back is just like purpose and intent. So that was my particular path. I had to work a day job for a long time. I don't anymore. I've been doing this full time for about the last 3 years. All of the things that I've been doing, and it feels great, even on days where I'm super broke and things are not working out and I couldn't get the locations. And, last year was crazy because it was like so for the most part, I usually work the, do the photo video work. And that's usually like the comfortable income. And then I put some of that money into the production company and, maintaining myself in my life. So I had crazy events booked last year here, Atlanta, up and down the East Coast. Everything I canceled all at once. Wow. And then I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll just focus more on the creative work. And then it was like all the locations I had booked was like, we're closed, whatever. And then, I had myself to think about like, okay, I'm at the head of this. And do I really want to be bringing people together in a time where nobody's sure what this is or how people getting it and stuff like that? And then, I bring people together and it's a whole spreader event, So it's like everything had to stop. And it was like that. I think last year, as far as like career wise, like feeling like, okay, I'm doing what I want to do finally. All these years after college, like it just feels like the last few years finally, like 28 to 31 for me, things have finally like kicked in. And that's hard, right? Because I graduated when I was 22. You're talking about like a 6-year period of just like, I'm gonna still keep going. I'm gonna still keep going. And that's not gonna be everybody's story, but I think you just have to like, there's an impatience that comes with being younger that I feel like life just has to sort of calm that for you. Like, everything is going to happen in its own time. And it's tough. It's tough because that energy is so like, this is right now. And you have to learn over time. Like, it's just, I promise you things are going to be, and that's what I be telling them. Like, it was funny because like this one girl I was going to work with, and I still plan to work with her if she's available, but she's a composer and she was one of the last people I was talking to that's like, she's like 23 or whatever like that. And so I was talking to her about like, making some music, composing music for, a couple of projects that I'm working on. And she was just so antsy, and I didn't know what it was about. So I started talking to her a little bit. She's like, yeah, because I got my degree in this, and I just graduated last year. And I'm trying to figure out what to do during COVID, but I've been reaching out to people and and I'm trying to make this happen. And I'm like, and I'm just listening. I'm like, oh, then it made sense. And then it was like, you just have to. I promise you, in time, everything's gonna work out the way it's meant to work out. But it's not gonna happen today, tomorrow, the way that you may want it to happen, but it's going to happen. And you just have to like be patient and let things go the way that they need to go, And it's funny because like, I feel like for me at 23, I remember feeling like I should be on by now. Right. I remember feeling like that and like believing it in my heart. Like you couldn't tell me, like, I'm like, I don't know what's taking so long. Like, I'm a year out.
You almost see it as like, I'm 5 years away from 18. And so it's been 5 years.
What's going on? Like, I should already be directing big budget. Like, when is somebody going to drop freaking, okay, Creed 2 in my lap? Like, what's going on? Like, right. I'm ready. And it's only like with getting older. It's only with like getting older that you can look back and reflect, right? And I'm like, I was 23. At 23, I was still, that was like my 5th year of college unofficially. I graduated 22. It was like I'm like
graduate school.
Anything that would have been put in my lap at 23, I would have blew easily. I was still partying fucking every week. What I mean? Stuff like this was like, It's just funny to think about, like, you know what I mean? Like to be able to reflect later on, like, girl, no. But it's like, I'm in a space now where it's like, okay, I can handle all these things now. Yeah. And life is lining up in a way that makes sense. So yeah.
And because we're in school the whole time, life for a lot of people doesn't happen until their mid-20s. And so as an artist, you don't even have the material in your head to really do anything significant. That's not everybody, right? That's some of us, right? So, but not be reckless though. If you say to somebody like, you don't have to get this degree, you don't have to go to college, what would you have done with that time otherwise?
For me, if I didn't go to school for like film and media, I would have definitely sought out those who make films and media, or I probably would have moved, to like a LA or Atlanta or something like that, and just reached out. Like the thing, I think the thing about like, and that's the thing love about like independent cinema and independent production companies and things like that, that's not necessarily attached to Hollywood, is that people are pretty reachable. You'd be surprised, quite a few people that I've reached out to, like, inquiries for mentorship or just work over the years, or people I wanted to connect with. It was just like a phone call or an email or multiple emails, because sometimes, especially when we're in production, it's like a lot going on. And that's what I usually tell people when they reach out to me. Like, if you want to reach out to me, you don't hear back from me, reach out again sometime soon. It's not me ignoring you. It's just stuff is going on. But yeah, you'd be surprised. Like, there was so many, and that was it for me. Like, going after it was like volunteering. It was like going where, like, looking stuff up locally. Okay, where is Black film stuff going on in the city? All right, cool. I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna talk to them. I'm gonna go to the screening, and just being in a space. You know what I mean? Just reaching out to people, just offering yourself up, or being honest with people. Hey, I'm looking to get into this. I don't know anything about this. I'm interested in doing this. That's really all you need as far as our field of work. I feel like you need that like apprenticeship period where like you really up underneath for somebody and they can show you the ropes. And once you have that a few years, you're able to stand on your own too in a particular position, whether that's production assistant or camera department or whatever. Then you can start to do projects on your own, and then you reach out to, you'll just, you find work locally on, the little websites and things like that, and you keep going like that. Most people freelance in our field of work, every now and again, production companies are hiring, and so you might, end up under a particular production company or a particular company, being one of their go-tos or one of their main sort of crew people. But yeah, just reaching out and just working, under people who know what they're doing, for a few years. I would say a solid 3. I think you do that a solid 3 years, like coming from a space of like not knowing nothing, or coming from a school space where it's all theory and nothing is practice. I say a solid 3 years, you'll be good to go.
Right. And also keep in mind, I'll just add this to it as well. Because you made me think, even that transfers to a lot of different industries, right? Call people, email people, show up, like put yourself physically in a space and be like, hey, my name is Chris, and like I'm interested in this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, not sure why you're here, but stay right there. All right.
Right.
And you may have to pop, maybe it's that second or third time you have to pop up. I used to tell poets this with features, because they were like, how do I get paid gigs? I'm like, go to the open mic, perform once, right? Say hello to the host, right? It ain't even, don't answer the feature there, right? Come back a second time, perform again, do the best poem you have, right? Do the best job you can do. Then that third time, you know what I'm saying? Like, and don't even ask then, just say, hey, if you have any feature slots at any point, let me know. Because as a host, now I know who you are, and now I have you in my head for opportunity that I had not thought about you for.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so,
it's the truth. And when you get the opportunity, don't blow it. When you finally get that opportunity, don't blow it. Don't be late. Don't come with excuses. Do your job. Anything you don't know, ask questions. I say it's better to ask questions than to be arrogant and fuck some stuff up. So, like, just ask questions. It's no such thing, especially when you're starting out, as a stupid question. You may end up under, somebody that might be a little unsavory, but that's just them. That don't have nothing to do with you. So always ask questions when you're starting out. It's better to ask questions. And the thing too, it's not easier to not go to school. This is another thing I want to add. It's not easier. You probably save a lot of money. That's really the benefit of it, that you'll save money, but your dedication to it can't slack at all. You actually have to be more dedicated in a way. And so when I left graduate school, so I'm in Philadelphia because I came here for graduate school at Temple. Okay. Right? I left 3 months in, but
before I left, I wrote up a 10-page document that was like my plan for the next 10 years. And then I wrote up another email that were my pros and cons of leaving that I sent to all my whole family and some my professors as well. But with that, I made the agreement with myself of like, I'm going to work on this 8 hours a day or more. And like the or more is a bonus for me. And I can go to Subway, get a foot long. That's my reward for that time. You know what I mean? I would reward myself, but it's like, I'm not going to work as much. I calculated how much time I spent studying in grad school and how much time I spent in classes. And I said, I'm going to do at least that amount towards poetry. Right. And I wrote those hours down. I had a timesheet for years, you know what I mean, before anybody was paying me to do anything. And
Absolutely.
And so I always like people to know, like, you can take another route, but you got to take the other route. It's not just, oh, I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Your discipline got to be a certain way. What you decide to do with your time, because nobody's on your back. Nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody's giving you a schedule. You got to be able to do it. And that's why I say, I think that's one of those things about like going to college for me that was a benefit. That's why I say all the time, like, in spite of the debt, it was good for me because it grew me up in a lot of ways, right? Nobody's there. That difference between high school and college where, you know, in high school, you might still have, you know, the school administrators running you down the hallway because, you know, do you got a hall pass to go to the bathroom? Ain't nobody paying you no attention in no damn college hallway. Ain't nobody paying you nobody. You know, so it's just like, you have to decide for yourself. And I think that's the thing about college sometimes is providing that cushion, right? Providing that space and access to resources that one you might not have had before, depending on your background, where you come from. And then having that cushion of like, oh, I got a little time to fuck up, or, you know, if I party too much, you know, I'll be all right, I can bounce back. Maybe I can take another class a semester or stuff like that. It is a lot harder to do that outside of college because most of the time, a lot of us, I know, especially, we're usually living with our parents or a guardian or a family member. And you know how Black people is. It's like, you 18? Listen, so what you about to do? You about to start paying the bill, you moving out, what you doing? Right. And having to, right. And now you're also in a place where you finally have a certain amount of freedom where, you know, people can't really tell you, if they was before or not, they definitely can't tell you, you know, what to do and when to do it and how to do it. So now you got all this newfound, like, I can do what I want. I can go where I want. I can be where I want. It's tough. You know, like I said, I think by the end of my college experience, it was like, okay, I have an apartment now. I was paying my rent. I wasn't going out all the time. I found a good balance between like class and party and work life and things like that. And it worked out for me. But when I was 18, what? No. You know, so you definitely, you have to be minded, I think, a certain way as a young person if you're going to go that route. Or like I said, you know, just put yourself in a space, you know, around people who are older than you, who have a certain amount of experience and is willing to, you know, go that route for you, you know, with you, and, you know, have that sort of patience to have you grow up and go through the process of like what you really need to do to make things happen for yourself. But yeah, that discipline, I know what you're talking about. Like even nowadays, like it's like my days look like most days I'm doing some sort of work. I'm working on like these businesses, or I'm doing something, you know, I'm doing something as far as my craft, as far as like art and writing and things like that. I'm making connections, I'm networking, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But that's all on me. It's nobody gets me up in the morning. Nobody makes me do anything. It's all on me. It's like, where do you want to, if this is what you really want to do, okay, what's your day looking like? What's your week's looking like? And, you know, and you have to get yourself in that space. And sometimes, like I said, we need help. Sometimes certain parts of the year, certain parts of our lives, we need those things, but you got to put yourself in those spaces then. You know what I mean? It's like, I know I'm not great at this, or like, this is kind of like an Achilles heel for me. So let me get around here and be around these people. It's all on you though. So it's something to remember.
Yo, this has been really inspiring. And
yes, we've been talking too long, KP. I'm sorry. We've been running my mouth.
It's all good. I want to thank you for sharing your story with us and let us know what you have going on. I'll be checking out everything soon. You have an exciting rest of 2021 coming up. So I'll be staying tuned. But thank you so much for being a part of the Branch Normal collection. I enjoyed having you. And like I said, this is really inspiring and good information.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, it's crazy because I haven't seen you in a long time, and it's good to kind of catch up at the same time. So yeah, and I don't know that we've had these types of conversations before, so it's been good. It's super good to be here. It's been a pleasure.